Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. on the dot, 6:01 on the dot, and this is our regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We'd like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Mr. McCauley, would please lead the
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mr. Mankowski.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. McCauley.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons. Here. Mr. Kleisner is absent.
Okay, with 6 members present, we do have a quorum. Is there anything the board would like to move from the consent agenda to new business? Nope. All right, hearing nothing, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
All right, with a 6-0 vote, the agenda is approved. Let's go ahead and move forward with the board and superintendent salutes. Dr. Layden.
Yes, thank you. I am proud to have our principals and Director Burchell here tonight. It is last week was Principal Appreciation Week, with Principal Appreciation Day being on Saturday. So what we typically have done is the following board meeting, which is this board meeting, because all of our principals are here to share. We take a moment to recognize our principals. Just for a little data piece before we recognize them, there are roughly 852 districts in the state of Illinois. With those districts, there are many districts that have multiple schools. So we have principals, technically thousands of principals across the state of Illinois, and proud to say that we have the best. So I'm proud to say that. So what I would like to do is, in the past, we've celebrated principal appreciation in the state for 30 years. So in the past, typically there's a proclamation that we get from the governor each year, and I've read parts of that. And as I got about halfway through it, the eyes kind of gloss over, and I get that. So instead, I tasked David Chavez to create a video recognizing our principals. So that will be a little more engaging and a little more fun than watching me read. If at some point you'd like me to read that later, I can, but this is going to be better. So if you would, before we play the video, our principals, if you could stand, please. All of our principals stand. Thank you for your work. And you can stay seated. I mean, you can sit for the video portion, so you don't have to remain standing. And now you will actually get to see our principals, a little bit about them, and the buildings in which they work. Thank you, Mr. Chavez. First day of school. Those are our principals. And for additional fun, under J3, you'll get to hear from each one of them with their SIP goals for their building. So not only is it just seeing them on the screen, you get to actually see them do their work in person. So again, thank you, Mr. Chavez, for putting the video together. And principals, thank you for all of your work.
Yeah, just want to take a second to thank you guys. Being in the weeds with having a young child in the schools, I know you guys deal with a lot of stuff, you know, from the good stuff to the bad stuff. So from the bottom of my heart, and you know, I feel like the board would echo this, we're thankful for the rock stars we have in place and all that you do. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right, thank you.
Okay, was that it, Dr. Layden?
That was it.
All right. Okay, well, I will save my spiel because you guys are all staying for your SIP goals, so I'll tell you it's okay to leave now. So we'll move forward to the consent agenda. Although if anyone wants to leave at this point, you're more than welcome. It's an open meeting, so feel free. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following information. The following action items: approval of accounts payable and payroll, October 2024. Approval of the minutes from the October 16th, 2024 regular meeting and October 23rd, 2024 special meeting. Approval of personnel. Approval of the Fox Valley Career Center fees for use of Kaneland facilities. And the following informational items: the student suspension data report and the Freedom of Information Act report, FOIA, as well as the field trip notification. At this time, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consented items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. The consent agenda is approved. All righty, let's move forward to public comments. We have 2 people signed up. So, give me a second and I will read the spiel. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. The board does not debate or engage in conversation during this time. I'd like to remind everyone to state your name and village of residence for the record. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. Public comment is a maximum of 30 minutes with a 20-minute total length of time for any one subject. Those who speak are asked to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. And first up we have, forgive me if I butcher your name, Catherine Soderstrom.
Good evening. My name is Catherine Soderstrom. I'm a resident of Elburn. I also have 2 kids in Kaneland School District. I have a child at the Kipla program in 4th grade, and I also have a child at Blackberry Creek Elementary. I'm here tonight again to talk about the Kipla program in general, just provide some positive, relevant updates in general for the community, but then also the board. I wanted to start off by saying thank you to the board for their continuing support of the Kipla program this year and consideration of the expansion to the high school rollout over the next several years. Personalized learning continues to be a valuable, evidence-based learning modality for the Kaneland Schools community in multiple ways. There are concepts of personalized learning being integrated into every school level for student engagement in the elementary schools, middle schools, other schools beside the Kipla program. In addition, parent interest and awareness about personalized learning has grown. Myself and several others involved in the Kipler program have spoken with multiple families that are stating that they are moving to Kaneland School District for personalized learning for the Kipler program. And I do think that that definitely has value for our community socially, but also financially as well. In addition, community awareness of personalized learning and the Kipler program is occurring and continuing to occur. Current parents are talking in the community about their experiences. Other community members, parents and non-parents, are saying, hey, tell me about this program, tell me why you like it, tell me how it's actually benefiting your child. And we are all more than happy to do so. In addition, the Kipler program is allowing both in and out of district educators and administration to see what personalized learning is and how it can be implemented into their own school districts in the surrounding communities. When I've been here in the past, in the spring, I talked about how personalized learning and the development of the Kipler program makes Kaneland a leader in education in the Kane County area, and you all continue to do that by supporting this program. Lastly, I'd like to continue to encourage the board and administration to continue planning to expand the program. If it does not happen this coming year based on the guidelines that have been set, I did want to just remind in general that currently the 7th grade enrollment meets criteria for expansion as of right now based on the criteria you all have set in 2 years. So 2 years from now, based on our numbers, expansion is absolutely possible. But let's start now. Let's make it successful. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, next up we have Mrs. Sheila Albano.
Hi, I'm Sheila Albano from Elburn, and I'm here again to invite all of you and those at home to come out to Kaneland's campus this Saturday. We are hosting the cross-country sectionals. There's only 4 of those held in the state, and we are hosting one of them. There will be 42 teams altogether, plus another 30 individuals who qualify, or runners who qualified as individuals, not as a team. And it will cost you $5 to get in, but that's because of the IHSA, not because of us. However, it's just an amazing experience, and we are constantly trying to have people come out and look and see what it is like to have that many kids, that many teams running in races. This particular sectional, both our boys and girls teams have qualified into the sectional. So if they are in the top 7 teams, they will move on to state, which is the following week. We'd love to have you there, wearing your black and white. Did you guys discuss? You didn't get the memo. To support these kids, but also the amazing number of volunteers that you will see stepping up to help run this thing. Your athletic department, your phenomenal trainer, and all of her work. We were thrilled to have Dr. Rolwing and Dr. Layton at Eddington. This will not be warm like Eddington, but so please do dress warmly. But please come on out and see what it is like to see these kids compete in this way. It is an unusual experience and not something just anybody. You know what basketball is. You know what football is. You may not know what cross country is. So please come on out. And as a completely other topic, I just want to say I've been now to several of the town halls, expecting to be there again this week, and specifically to people out there, anybody here who hasn't been to one, they are doing a phenomenal job. They're doing what you asked of them to do. They are not getting anybody to respond. We've had, 11 each now out of the 2. Several of us are just begging people to come and at least take the surveys, but really want them to come and be able to look at the slides and the presentations and stuff, because as I've been telling people, you asked for input, you're listening. This is what we've been begging for years, and so now it's up to us to step up, and I hope more people will. So I just want you to know they're doing a great job.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Rolwing and Jackie and Mr. Chavez. So Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. So just so everyone's aware, Board Member Sims and I are going to be matching every meeting now. That's the plan. Just kidding. Just kidding. All right, let's move forward with the first item. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Albano. First item of new business, the Caneville Fire Protection Update. Dr. Layton.
Yes, thank you. Just as a reminder, this is a topic that we've had in both September and now October, and we'll plan for either November or a December update as well, based on new information. So with that, Chief Tyndall, if you could please come to the microphone and share anything that is new, updated, or just relevant information to share with the community in regards to everything that's going on for first responding from Caneville.
Yes, thanks again for having me. This is going to be continuing ongoing updates as we go through, and as long as I'm the chief there, then I will always be here and always give updates, whether it be in person or on the agenda or anything else like that. So the ambulance in service, we're back on track with the system. So the areas of concern that they had, for us, it never changed the track of where we were at. Just for them, they were looking at a couple language things and a couple issues. IDPH got back with them and said, nope, it's not a problem, so they're back on track with us. So we're still working towards putting that in service, hopefully real quick. We've been able to add some more EMS personnel. Currently, we have 8 more of our own personnel that are in the EMS class, EMT class to start with. So that will bolster our numbers. So we're going to be looking probably by March, 26 to 30 EMS personnel, whether it be EMT or paramedic. So I've been able to put on 3 more additional paramedics. So when that transition comes to go from BLS to ALS, we'll be able to flip it. The hardest part has always been going from a non-transport to a transport, just from where we go. So we're laying the groundwork. The system's, feeling comfortable with it. We know that we can do that, and IDPH is helping out on the back end. So response times have been improved. From our point of view, we've been staffing the station during the daytime towards gotten us to where I'm putting the sign-up sheet for the evening times now. So instead of just doing 7 in the morning till 5 at night or 5 p.m. for staffing, I'm looking to do it from 5 to 10. Our limitations on our station, if anybody's seen Caneville, it's a quaint volunteer department. It has no living quarters, so that's something that we're addressing. But we can go from 7 in the morning with staff till 10 at night, and that's our goal. So the 5 to 10 is the next step that we're doing, as well as with the improvement from the non-transport to the transport, and it's still all on scale. Recent calls that we've had in and around the school has been, I think, fun. From my point of view, it's fun. I know I was talking to a couple of the principals. You guys don't like to see us. We like to come out when there's no injuries. So that's always the good thing, or whatever else. Other than that, nobody likes to see us at all. So, but we've been able to respond. Big Rock, Elder, and us have all responded to all the calls. We've all worked well together. We always have. So we'll continue on. I've talked to Chief Hunnicky today. A couple things with today that he was telling me about with the call, with a slight delay in their response, and I'm like, it's understood. It always is with certain things, because for his delay in certain response, it really wasn't a delay. It was just a different engine that they had sent over, which, we understand that that's going to happen. And for us, I'd sent our guys out, so they went one other direction, so I had to come up from a different way. So it looks like that, we're coming from different directions, but everything still worked out. So we've had, I think, real good response times, as well as the cooperation that we have with it. And then tomorrow is our big start drill for the active threat scenario that we're going to be doing. It's just a rotational, full functional drill. So our full functional drill that we're building up into, this is kind of the prelude to it, to show the different specific areas that we need to implement into the system. So law enforcement will respond. They would have their mission set that they're going to do. And then when we filter in and start working with them in that mission set, then we're going to establish the incident command. We'll have trauma triage and transport areas that will be set up. We'll have initial contact teams, patient collection areas. So all of that dynamics, which is a lot of people and moving parts, that we got to take care of and set up. So we're just going to kind of run through mini rotational areas to get everybody familiar with all of them, and then continue working on that all through up until the summertime, where we're going to have a big full-scale drill. So Other than that, then if anybody has any questions or anything?
Great updates.
Yeah, thank you for the updates, definitely. We
Yep.
appreciate these. I appreciate them. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and then after this, then the next thing we're working towards with the district is the Ignite presentations and trainings and stuff, and just ongoing trainings that we can do throughout for the school. So,
That's great.
all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you so much.
I would share that the information we just sent, I think through Mr. Chavez or Dr. Bogan, a district-wide alert for the training for tomorrow night, and you've seen some of the signs up around the high school. That is, again, just a training exercise, and that's what the information is. Just to ensure we can get better at this and for the safety and welfare of everybody on campus. And also, I would share a thank you to Chief Tyndall. Last week, I did a field trip over to the fire station. He showed me around and spent about an hour there talking through the process, the next steps. So if you're ever looking for an entertaining field trip, contact Chief Tyndall, and I'm sure he'd be happy to give you a field trip of the Caneville Fire Department.
Great.
Any questions or any follow-up? One of the things that we had talked about was there might be more information in a December update rather than coming back in November. So we'll be in touch, especially with a couple of our referendum-related updates in November, might be lengthier topics. So we'll see what is new and relevant to either have Chief Tyndall come back in November or December, but we'll do it accordingly based on the information.
Sounds good.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, maybe if it's the will of the board, we can, if you have relevant updates, we can bring you on, but maybe not like monthly, or you can add it, like you said, in the.
Yep.
That way we don't have to, Okay, there's no action necessary for tonight, from the Kaneland Fire Protection Update. But the second item of new business is the approval of the tentative tax levy. Dr. Bogan, you're up.
Yes, thank you. It's hard to believe it's already that time of year again, but we are asking for the tentative tax levy to be approved this evening. We're gonna go through I'm gonna go through a presentation with you, and as I'm going through this, please, if you have questions, feel free to stop and ask those. We're gonna go through the tax levy calendar, just some general information, the process, and then also the data assumptions and how all of this is calculated. First and foremost, there was a new public act that was put in place back in 2022, and it just requires us that when we do this process, one of the things that we share is our ending fund balance by fund as of September 30th. So I did go ahead and list those there. This does change month over month and year over year as we expend our dollars, and also as we get those dollars in. The tax levy calendar, this year we are, tonight is the approval of the tentative levy. On November 25th, you will receive any updates to the levy. So if there's any major changes anticipated prior to that final levy presentation, you'll hear about those on November 25th. On November 28th, I will be filing and posting the notice in the paper and also publicly on our website. We need to advertise the public hearing for the tax levy that will take place on December 9th. So on December 9th, we will actually have our levy hearing, and we'll be asking the board to approve the final levy. One of the things that I think is really unique about Kaneland is that every year during the tax levy, Kaneland has always chosen to do a truth in taxation hearing, regardless if it's over the 5% cap. And so this is a process that we do every year that should not be new for anyone. December 10th, right after the levy is approved, I will file that at the county clerk's office, both at Kane and DeKalb County. This year, the last date to file is December 24th. It's always the last Tuesday in December that you're required. So we do have a couple of alternative dates available that would be on the 11th and 12th, should we need to make any changes. In March and April, that's when we verify those extension amounts. In May and June, the county will send out those tax bills, and then June and July is when we start getting those payments. just some general information about the tax levy. The levy is actually the total amount that the district requests, or the taxing body requests, for each operating fund to cover expenses for the following year. So, one of the things, and you'll see it in a later slide, but the levy that we're doing this year is for our budget, what we're gonna expend next year. Like I said, the adoption deadline is that last Tuesday in December. And for this district, our tax levy is the primary source of revenue for the district. It's definitely the most stable and reliable source of funds when we think about state payments or any of that federal funding. And then, again, this tax levy is for next school year. So the funds that we get through this tax levy will be used for our budget to operate for the 25-26 school year. Just to show a breakdown a little bit, for sources of revenue, as you can see, 81% of our revenue comes from local sources. 15% is from the state, 2% is from federal, and then 2% is other. And that 2% other category, that's things like payments from other school districts, tuition, that type of thing. Fees, anything else. Any questions about that? I think what's really, and maybe I do. I have it in a different slide. What's really important in this process is the equalized assessed value, or EAV. This is the property valuation. So it's the total amount of property after the county and state equalization calculations are performed. So at the state and county level, they have sort of their own modification that they do to come up with our total, but it's the EAV is the total amount of property, the total value of property. It's important because we've seen consistent EAV growth in this district over the last 10 years. We are anticipating a significant growth this year at about 16%, and that's really from new construction, new projects, building that's happening in the area. We recently met with our municipalities, and Elburn, Maple Park, and Sugar Grove were in attendance, and they all shared some of the growth that's happening in their communities. It's primarily residential with a little bit of commercial mixed in. EAV is really important because it helps determine what the extension amount for the operating funds is going to be once we know what that limiting rate is going to be. Excuse me. We talked about earlier how, 81% of our local tax revenue, or our revenue comes from local taxes, and this is really important to note that 80% of that is residential. 10% is farm. We have 6% commercial, and then the rest is really made up of that industrial, local railroad, and some other, but the majority of it really is coming from residential. Over the last 10 years, there has been a significant change in EAV, with the last couple of years really seeing the most growth. Last year, well, the last 3 years, we saw 6.3% new EAV growth, followed by 8.39%, and then this year we're estimating it to be about 16%. This new construction is very important in this because it plays a role in how we're able to add additional taxes. New construction helps exclude the value, we exclude the value of new construction from the total property value when we calculate the limiting rate. And so by doing that, that limiting rate is adjusted upwards, and it's intended by the tax cap laws, which we'll talk about, so that a district can benefit from that new growth, from that new tax base, since we're adding new properties. New growth over the last several years, as we said, has been substantial. This year, we're anticipating about $22 million in new growth. Last year, we saw just over $15.6 million. wanted to talk a little bit about PTEL, or the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. This is really important. It's really designed to help limit growth of property tax extensions, but it's also misleading. I think some people hear this and they think, well, it's, you know, referred to as the tax cap. It doesn't limit an individual's property tax bill or the assessed value of that property. So it doesn't put a cap on that. What it does is it does put a cap on how much we can inflate the total ask by. So here, as we'll see, it is, the limitation is CPI or 5%, whichever is higher. And so for the past 2 years, we've actually been at that 5% cap. It was the first time that CPI went over that 5%, but we were capped at that. This year, CPI is actually 3.4, so that's what we'll be using. Just to reiterate, the limitation doesn't apply to that new property. Are there any questions so far?
If the limitation doesn't apply to the new property, then what is that?
It just
Tax
applies
add.
applies to the existing, and so that's where the first time those new properties come on the tax rolls, you're able to capture basically all of the possible funds
Okay.
that you could get from that.
Okay.
There are quite a few PTEL or tax cap counties in Illinois. As you can see, much of it is clustered around larger cities, and that's really where we see sort of those areas of inflation. They're typically hit the hardest. We do have a CPI price index history, which you can see here. The 10-year average has been 2.47, and so we have seen years where it's been low. And significantly low, and then as we've seen it jump up, we've had both 21 and 20 and 22 were at that 5% for that cap. So this year, you know, thankfully we have seen that go back down to 3.4. This is just kind of a fun chart on how these are all interconnected, right? I think sometimes it's like, okay, what happens if our EVA goes up? What happens if it goes down? If CPI and the tax rate remain flat, everything stays flat, right? We can't gain any more. As EVA goes down, so the less value we have of property, as that goes down, the tax rate goes up. As the value of property goes up, the tax rate actually goes down. And as you see, you'll see that here. That's happening in our district right now. And so just to share a little bit of the limiting rate, this next graph that you see, or this next chart, it shows what CPI is, what EVA has been, what new property is or has been estimated at, what the corresponding limiting rate, and then what that actually turns into what the capped extension is. And so the capped extension is what we're limited to be able to ask for. It shows the additional money that we get year over year from the levy and what the extension percentage increases over last year or over prior year. But as you can see from this, our limiting rate has consistently gone down. So for the levy process, where we start is by using last year's number. So we take last year's aggregate extension and we apply the prior year CPI. So last year's CPI of 3.4 is what we do apply to that. We then estimate what we think our EAV and new construction will be. And that's not me coming up with a number, that's me getting those numbers from the county clerk's and assessor's office. They provide that information based on all of their calculations that they do and information that they gather from all of the municipalities. That then determines the limiting rate, and then we basically split that up into our different levy funds. So each of our funds has a different account that we essentially make our ask from. So just to reiterate, the levy is our ask, and then the extension is what we actually are going to get from it. So two slightly different things. And so I did include this, and I know you've seen this before, but how to calculate the limiting rate. So you take the prior year's extension times 1 plus the lesser of 5% or CPI. And then you take the total EAV minus the new construction dollars. So right now, we're at almost $1.1 billion in EAV, but we're gonna subtract that 22 million off of it. And then we divide that by that top number. And so that will give you the limiting rate. So that 4.6441 that we had for the limiting rate, that's how we did that. Are there any questions so far? This is just, I gave you a slide in here that actually included the calculation on how that 4.6641 came to be, using what our last year's extension was, times the 1 plus the CPI, the 3.4, our total EVA minus the new construction, and that's what it was estimated. And so the important thing there is, how do we get to that capped extension? How do we get to that $60 million? Well, you take your total EAV minus the new construction times the limiting rate, and that gives you the capped extension. Any questions on that? So for this year, the district is estimated to receive about 6.3% more, or approximately $3.4 million more than last year's tax extension. In order for us to balance revenues and expenditures, we need to make sure that we don't spend more than this amount. And given that we know we have a current deficit in our budget, we actually will need to take that into account as well. So it's not just about spending, it's not just about not spending $3.4 million more. This is a breakdown of where we fall as compared to others, and so we have tax rates by some of our comparable districts. Kaneland is currently the highest, and I think why that's important is if I look at the next slide, we don't necessarily have the highest EAV, but we don't have the lowest EAV either. And so one of the things that I would expect to see is that maybe we would have the highest tax rate if we had the lowest EAV per pupil, but we don't. And so one of the reasons that we do have that higher tax rate right now is that we do have significant amounts of new construction, and we are trying to capture every one of those dollars from new construction. The other thing that plays into that is our operating expense per pupil. And Kaneland does have the third highest operating expense per pupil as compared to other districts of our size that we use for some other items. I think what people really want to know is what's the bottom line for their individual taxes and what it means for our tax rates. And so this is important. Our tax rate is actually going down by a total of it's going down by a total of 75 cents this year. And that's for every $100 of assessed value. So it's going from $6.38 to $5.63. And so people kind of say, okay, well that's great, but what does that actually mean for my tax bill? And so I did add this slide, and I really want to go through this one. This is just as a sample tax bill. So the first in the red that you see, you're going to see a breakdown of assessed home value at $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and $500,000. I gave you what the approximate tax bill was in 2023 for a home of that value based on that year's tax rate. I also did that for this year and the anticipated tax rate for this year. So there is an estimated decrease just based on that. So a home that's again valued at $200,000 would see a decrease of just over $500. $753 for a $300,000 home, just over $1,000 for a $400,000 home, and then just over $1,200 for a $500,000 home. And so I think the challenging thing is, but people say, but my tax bill doesn't go down. If my tax rate's going down, I would expect to see my tax bill go down. What we see though is increased value in those homes. So a home that was $200,000 in 2023, based on what's happening in the housing market, it could go up as much as 18%. And so I did use a fairly aggressive increase on this so someone could see, right, okay, if my home last year was $200,000, this year it's valued at $230,000, what's the tax implication? So even though the rate has gone down, my home is valued at more, and so my tax bill goes up. So I really wanted to be able to show that that's the impact. And so it swings the other way, right? It goes up by $500, it goes up by $850, it goes up by $1,100, by $1,400 for those same homes, because they're no longer worth $500,000. They're now worth $575, $460, $345, and $230, which is great for people when you're selling. But when you continue to see that increased value in your home, it can make an impact on your individual bill. So just to recap, any updates to the board or to the levy that are significantly impacting will be presented at the November 25th meeting. I will be posting in the paper to advertise our levy hearing on November 28th, and then we will actually have our levy hearing and hopefully board approval of the final levy on December 9th, and then the very next day I will go and file those with the county clerks. But what questions can I answer? I know everyone has seen this many times, but
So, you're asking us to approve it, adopt it right now. What options do we have? I mean, we can basically ask for less, right? Which means we can't ask for more. We're asking for the max we can.
Nope, we can't ask for more. And that's where that cap comes in. So we could ask for less. And I think boards or, people in my position, we always hesitate to ask for less because it doesn't have just an impact on the school district today and what's needed next year. It has an impact every year forward, right? And so there is the possibility that you leave some money on the table, especially when it comes to that new construction piece, because whatever we ask for this year, that will next year we'll base it off this year, and that's the law. And so I think it's difficult sometimes to not try and ask for the full amount, right, and to hold back some, because it's going to affect every year moving forward, not just this year, and it could be a profound way. I think one of the other options or ideas out there that some districts do is they ask for the full amount, and then decision making happens along the way, and they look at, okay, well, how can we abate some of this? How can we give it back later? Many districts don't do that either, because I think sometimes the amount that's abated is either too small for people to notice, or by the time you get to that next tax cycle, then, it's not, the impact isn't always felt as much. But that is also another option.
Comments, questions? Mr. Mankivsky, still with us?
Still with you, sorry.
Any questions?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Bogan. We appreciate it. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education adopts the 2024 total tentative operating levy of $60,280,000.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Cook?
Aye.
Mr. McCauley?
Aye.
Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons?
Aye.
All right, 6-0, the motion carries. The 2024 operating levy is approved. Third item of new business is a school improvement plan. Dr. Layton.
Yes, thank you. Annually, at this meeting in October, we have our Ed Services, Director of Ed Services and principals come, give an overview and outline of the school improvement plans, what those goals are per building, and then as a reminder, in May or June, we bring back the results for the year, and they indicate how we did, where we met the goals, and to see what plans might need to be updated in the future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ed Services, and you can start sharing, and then like I shared, that's where our principals will step in a little bit later.
So Dr. Horn and I are going to give you a little bit of an overview just of the school improvement planning process and then the district all-in goal. And then we will hear, like Dr. Layden said, from each of the individual building goals. The school improvement process is actually set forth by the state of Illinois. It is linked to teacher evaluation and administration evaluation, which does link us into a little bit of a specific time frame, which does limit the data sources you can use in school improvement planning. That being said, that doesn't mean that there aren't other data sources that are on review and constantly being looked at, but just outside of school improvement planning. MTSS coordinators, PLCs, professional learning communities, KLCs, Kaneland learning communities, KDAB, Kaneland data analysis blitz teams, all look at data sources on a weekly basis, monthly basis, in team meetings, in monthly meetings that are more timely data sources that we have. You won't see necessarily IAR data because that data does not come in the time frame that is set by the state of Illinois for school improvement planning. That doesn't mean that we don't use those data sources for other types of planning, professional development, and discussions for continuous improvement. It just doesn't fall in school improvement planning. The school improvement planning process, the big time frame is October, which we are here for, where the board approves at least a district goal and then at least one goal per building that is set and starts with goal setting in administrative evaluations and then teacher evaluations within that October time frame or previous to October in that September goal setting time frame. Approval at the board, we review it in one meeting and then consent approval in the meeting after that. And then we have from October until about that February timeframe for really action planning, and then we need to do some post data. It seems so quick when we still have almost a whole trimester left after February, but because the evaluation process is tied to it, and some evaluations have to be done by March 15th, we have to have that data starting to have collected in February. And so although our schedule up here, really it is an ongoing continuous improvement process that starts at the end of one school year. We look at the full culminating data. In the summer, we really look at what that data tells us about areas to globally improve. We start to project the next set of goals. The data collection and action plans that you will see really work from October to February. And then we continue to look at the collection, many of the plans and the action plans, you'll see a second data collection in May. That's not formally reported as part of the school improvement formal goal, but it's a second data point just to see really where the students do end their cycle with that goal, even though it's not formally reported as part of their SIP goal. And so it is a continuous cycle, but the process that is reported in the state SIP goal really is in October to about February, March timeframe to really meet the evaluative process in the administrative and teacher evaluation. In teacher evaluation, 30% of the teacher evaluation is linked to school improvement goals. They need to have 2 school improvement goals that are student growth goals that are built on the school improvement goals that you'll see tonight. All of our goals in Kaneland, whether it be the district all-in goal, and when we say the words all-in, it just means that every student, whether it's early childhood through 12th grade, all of them really engage in the activity. It is not typically something that is just a certain content specific. It's something that ranges, as you'll hear Dr. Horn speak, it's something that can be done in any content area or any grade span, and that's really why we've always considered them an all-in goal. You'll hear it revolving around feedback, which happens in any instructional setting, and that's why it's an all-in concept. Our district goals are really meant to encompass every learning environment within the district. We typically will have one district all-in goal linked to the Kaneland Connects, the 5 commitments. And either will encompass all of the commitments or have a focus area in a couple of the commitments. You may remember from past strategic plans, we highlighted one commitment, or our past goal last year was an assessment of the 5 commitments and how well our students knew the language of the 5 commitments. Based on our previous goals, we identified an area of feedback and knowing how to drive my learning and what my next steps in learning were as that all-in goal, which Dr. Horn, I don't want to steal his thunder. He's going to talk more about that in just a second. After we set our all-in goal, then we work with our individual buildings to look at their data sources, to look at what area can we look for a continuous improvement, what data sources can we have that go from October to February, and then what actions are accomplishable within that time frame. And then we ask them, and what links to the strategic plan do they have? We always want to make sure that every school improvement goal has a direct link to those 5 commitment areas within the strategic plan. And then overall, again, you can see that we are really focusing on, as a district, our global focus of co-construction feedback, which you'll hear a little bit more about. Our all-in goal as a district, just structure-wise, is assessed and monitored by our department, the Department of Educational Service. We run all of the data. We often use that data and surveys with our partnership with Northern Illinois University. We run our surveys for validity through them, and then they also assist us with the data collection and reporting as well. And then we collaborate with the principals to help them and assist them in writing their action plans and looking at their data sources as well. Globally, any questions about the overall process before we dive into the specific district's goal and then the school goals as we go through?
So when you look at data in terms of performance, are we just comparing to prior year? Are we comparing to comparables? What's our basis for improvement?
It depends on the goal specifically. Our goal for like the district one, we do a pre and post test. We do a pre-test in September, and our post will come in February or end of January. You'll see in some of the building goals the same thing. Typically a cycle will be, if you do a pre-post comparison, it'll be September to late January or September to February. You'll see in one of the building goals, it might be last year's February to this year's February. And so you have a couple options when you're doing school improvement planning. You can choose to do February to February or a pre-September to a post-February and look for a growth goal within a year.
So that's the focus of a SIP then, basically internal school improvement.
Yes.
So
Yep.
we're looking from
Not
one
external.
point within to the next point. Good.
Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Yep. And sometimes it's interesting, we had many conversations with our ad team. It is easier sometimes when you've had a multi-year goal because you have that baseline data coming with you, or if it is an assessment that we have had for years and years as a type 2 assessment, like our local math assessment we've had since 2009. And so we have good benchmark data that says our trend analysis of what our typical growth is. But if it is a newer assessment, which you will hear one of our schools has a newer assessment that they're looking at, figuring out that appropriate growth goal is sometimes a little bit of a guess. And because you look at the pre-assessment because it's the first time the student has ever taken this type of assessment, and you try to make your best educated guess. And that is when we rely on working with Northern to say, what should a typical growth be when we've never given this assessment before? And so sometimes that we also have the ability in December to do a mid-year check where we can give a little mini assessment just to see if, like, are we in the ballpark of about midway through check? And we can readjust the percent at that time, especially for those that have selected an assessment that has not been a typical assessment that we've done over the course of multiple years. And so you may hear them say, we're hoping, 65% seems reasonable. And others are assessments that we absolutely know a rate of growth because of the trend that we've had for multiple years that we're hoping to achieve.
Are there correlations, is it appropriate to even think of it this way, between our internal assessment methods and external ones? Do you ever see like correlative relationships? between the
I
two?
think, it's interesting. We've started to dive a little bit into that, knowing that IAR data is getting released later this week. I think we definitely saw a lot of emphasis in a new adoption of reading and word study, for example, over the last 2 years at the elementary level. And I would say that we see some correlative data to that in our IAR coming out later this week. Is it, exactly one-to-one? Not always. The mystery still that we have had some discussion on, and I know even previous to Dr. Horn, Mr. Raleigh and I had a lot of discussion on, our school improvement goals don't always have a great correlation to our iReady. As you've heard us in June and July talk about, we are often above state and national norm in iReady, and our school improvement goals show our progress, and then we don't see that on always the standardized state test. And so that is a continuing question that we are continuing to have a lot of debate and conversation. What is it? Either in the language, in the way that we focus on the test, the emphasis that we put on with the students, the environment we create, and that is, we do see a disconnect between our iReady, our school improvement progress, even our type 2 math test and Rigby test, and our iReady our IAR performance.
Yeah, and I wonder, and I don't know, and so I'm thinking out loud, please. Should those standardized tests drive the internal ones? And I've said this before, like, I don't believe standardized tests are the end all to everything, right? I would love to see standardized test scores go up, but I don't want to teach the test either, right? So like, that's.
Yeah.
So I wonder, is that a driver, or should they be considered, separate entities and then maybe find trends later?
Yep.
Yeah,
go ahead. No, for sure.
So some of the conversations we're having, because we've been asking the same questions.
Yeah.
I like that you're pointing out the driver. I think the disconnect in form is maybe the better word. So from the high school perspective,
Sure.
if there is a writing standard that the students are being held accountable for on now the ACT, is some of that writing, is there room for it that's happening organically within our classes, such that we can come before the board and report, this is what a 7th grade standard looks like, this is what an 8th grade looks like, and here's the report and what we're seeing. So if there's a disconnect, that we're able to identify that sooner.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think the other thing that we were just talking about at our math curriculum review today too is, are there things that we are able to do in our typical math instruction and with our local math assessments that can model a bit more, not necessarily to teach to the test, but that can model and give a higher comfort level for an IAR testing environment. The online tools, for instance, the way that you problem solve through some of the language of IAR, and how can we look for supported tools within the math adoption that could also mirror on our math assessment to better help them and support them in that might give us both, the learning success on our local assessment as well as IAR. Like, those are the good, rich conversations that I'm very excited that are happening with our adoption process this year.
Me too. I like that thinking a lot. I think that's great. So that's a good direction from my point of view. Yeah.
Other questions about the overall kind of calendar timeline and the difference between, global data review and specifically school improvement that's linked to kind of the state process and goals, that, again, the time frame being October to February, you're going to look at some of the action plans like, wow, that seems pretty distinct and short. It is a shorter time frame when you think about the learning of an October start and a February somewhat end, although all the goals and principles do continue the work through May.
All right. So actually summarized a lot of that. As Dr. Mumm mentioned, we have 2 goals that we work on as a district. One is the all-in goal, meaning everyone's working on it. The all-in goal is designed to assess the work that's being done on Kaneland Connects. For the purpose of this measurement, we've identified 1 strand of the 5 strands of Kaneland Connects, and it's on proficiency-based progress. We know that progress happens when students are given feedback. So the focus on this is on the type of feedback that we're seeing within the classrooms. So we're assessing this through student survey data. There was a baseline survey that was provided for students that they've reported out. So we do have a baseline on the type of feedback that the students are reporting that they're having and they're experiencing within the class. In addition to that, the Ed Service team is going out and is doing what we're calling data walks. We have a data collection tool that we're using to identify the type of feedback that we're seeing in action. And we're reporting that out on a monthly basis internally to our teachers and other stakeholders so they're aware of how we're progressing towards that. When we talk about the types of feedback, there's a typology that we use, or different types. There are 3 different categories. There's a time and a place for each of the categories. One is more basic. It's a directive, this needs improvement, right? That is feedback. And at times, in certain content area, actually all content areas, at certain times of the day, that's absolutely necessary. But the goal is always to get it so it's learner-driven and learner-centered. So the higher level, the type 3 category, would be engaging more in back and forth where the student is actually asking the question and guiding that conversation and that feedback. So the data that we're collecting for that paints that array of the types of feedback. Looking to see if we can have growth in the higher level types of feedback where the student is showing reflection and not just being told what to do. So that's for the all-in goal. Can I answer any questions on that?
So I have a question. So could you maybe give us an example of how a conversation would go with an instructor about improving this or engaging this or getting this going?
Sure. So at a basic level, a corrective would be that you've got, if it's a writing assignment, you've got the writing assignment, this is not set up correctly. You're going to go back and check your notes and take a look at that again, okay? At a more analysis level, you're going to hear things like the teacher say, okay, remember what we talked about when we're citing direct references from the textbook? How do you have these transitions set up? Do you have the quotes in the right place? Start thinking about that, because there's a little bit more of analysis to it. Rather than just telling somebody they're doing something wrong, they're providing a little bit more analysis for it.
So when you're walking around, you're looking for that higher conversation?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Both from teacher to student, but also student to student, because that is part of the feedback as well.
Yeah, I like that. If you're not seeing it, what does that conversation look like then? So how do you have a conversation with the teacher themselves?
So for the purpose of the data collection when you're in the classroom, we're in there just gathering the information. So we're not, at that point, it's not evaluative.
Okay.
And for the teachers watching at home, we understand that there are times we come in and you're having a conversation with the class about something, and that feedback's not part of that.
Sure.
That's why we get out as often as we can, because you really want to get lots of different samples along the way, because there are going to be times when you see that. That's when. Now, for the professional development that are being provided for our evaluators, who you're going to be hearing from momentarily, that is absolutely about the types of conversations you're having through that evaluation process. I'm a fan of making sure that things merge together nicely. We do have our state-adopted evaluation tools, the Danielson framework, which is by like 98% of the school districts. Higher level of Danielson is just that type of feedback, where the student is actually asking, I'm struggling with this right here. I was really struggling with the MLA. Can you get some help for me on this? I think I have this set up correctly. However, my transition seems a little bit awkward. So that's that ideal that you visit from time to time when you're working with a student. Oftentimes it is more teacher directed, because we're dealing with students, and students grow and mature at their own rate over time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's this constant balance of getting a good snapshot, getting a good sampling, because if you just walk in on one day and you're like, oh, I know how this teacher teaches now, we know that's not true. But you also don't want to be intrusive. I'm sure a lot of teachers at home are like, yeah, we don't want you in a room all the time, right? So like there's a balance between those two, right? So
and it would be poor data collection if we went out October 15th, December 15th, and then reported it all in January, because those are just two snapshots. So it is, we have design days where we as an Ed Service team go out, but then individually we're also going out and getting out and getting in classrooms as often as we can in order to get that data along the way. And then reporting out on what we're seeing so that our evaluators can have that information when they're working with the teachers. It is really with the lens on supporting and developing our teachers so that the work can be purposeful and meaningful when they're working with their students.
Good.
And we've designed 2 common feedback PDs that all the principals will be delivering to their staff, that we give them samples that came from Kaneland classrooms that they project, and then they say, you know, like looking at the 9 types and the 3 categories, what would you say could be a directive, and how would you engage in a conversation in level 3? So they can practice those conversations with real student work samples in a non-threatening, non-evaluative way through the common PD that every staff member will engage in.
That's good.
Yeah. The goal is to be using those techniques by design, not by chance.
Yep.
So knowing when, and it's just broadening the toolkit of the instructor so they know which tool to use and what the student needs in that moment.
Yeah, and I like the positive spin to it. I think that's better than saying, oh, you didn't do this right. Like,
Right.
I think that's much better. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the spirit of personalization, we always make sure that, or we are making sure that each of our schools have an opportunity for at least one of the goals to be designed around their needs because of the diversity of the grade levels and within the community. So I believe Stuart is up first. Okay. I'm sorry.
Good evening, everyone. Last year for John Stewart, we focused on writing, and we did meet our goal, but we wanted to continue on with, as a team, like she said, in May, we were problem solving, like what other, you know, how can we support our students in writing still, but how can we connect it, and then we're like, to reading. How can we utilize our instructional tools that we have, Fontes and Pinnell, and really put fidelity within that program? And we also looked at our IAR, and we know our students did struggle with reading and responding in their writing. So we're like, ooh, we could do something on that. But like Dr. Mom said, we didn't have an assessment for that. So we got, we kind of collaborated with Kipla, thank you Kipla, for a continuum they made. We took that continuum based on Fontes and Pinnell, different things within their standards, and we made it for a rubric for our students. So that led us to our goal, which is a stretch goal. We don't have that data before, and you can see that data under there. It is going to be a stretch goal, but we are giving that direct instruction to our students, and we really believe that we can work hard if we're dedicated and focused, that we can meet this goal. So it is that we're going to have our students increase by 60% as a grade level or meet the proficiency of 85 when responding in writing to their instructional guided reading texts. So we wanted to do it not just on a certain text. They're going to be in guided reading groups when they're doing this. It's going to be at their instructional level reading, but they do have the same criteria. Like, for example, you can see kindergarten and first grade, they're going to be focusing, we're kind of doing a CER, to cite or answer. So the kindergarten and first grade, it's developmentally appropriate that they read something or listen to something, and then they're able to give an answer for it and write it down or use a picture. Then in first grade, we would like to see more writing and that sentence structure and the conventions. We're going to start really focusing on that too. In second and third grade, they're going to read text at their level, and then they're going to have to answer the question or the prompt, and then they're going to have to find evidence within the text. And fourth and fifth grade, which is like the hardest skill, is find that connection, that reasoning of why. Why are they answering it? Why this evidence? And really dive deep into this. So we really hope that this goal in this process really just has students take a pause, really work on their comprehension and understanding of what they're reading, and then writing it as well. What does that look like? So we'll go to the next slide. So like I said, our rationale is just we are really going to focus on that reflection practice. It works really well with the district goal of feedback because we have guided reading groups where teachers can, and writing groups where they're going to have conferences with feedback. about it. We're going to increase that comprehension. We're going to provide that text evidence, and like I said, making a connection, and each grade level has something specific within the CER that they're going to be focusing on. We also noticed in middle school, we talked, a lot of our 5th graders collaborate with the 6th grade teachers, and noticed our students weren't prepared to have those CERs when they went to middle school and answer those questions. So we really wanted to bridge that gap and ensure that we were teaching those strategies when they move on to middle school as well. So that was another guiding factor we had. So our action plan, we have data chats. We've already had one already, and it's super exciting. Our students came, every class came and sat on the floor in the hallway with our data board. We had all that pre-data that we had. We talked about what the goal is, what are we going to work on, what does it look like, and then we'll do that a couple more times. We've had students, excitedly, teachers will send them down and show me, they're like, look what I did. I created an answer, and then I found the evidence, and then, and they had it all highlighted and excited, and they said, does it move the green? Which we have it in green and blue in a pie chart for students to really understand what we're talking about. And so they're really excited and invested in this goal, which I felt is a big deal. We have SEL, because writing can be tough. Like, this is where we're really pushing them. So we're going to work on growth mindset and perseverance, as well as goal setting. So that'll be our SEL that we're focusing on. Like she said, we have student conferencing with that feedback PD coming in, like our F&P, making sure that we are doing our guided reading practices with fidelity. We created common vocabulary. We have a poster that we created, and it's in every room. We have large ones, we have small ones, we have desk ones. We have it all over the place so that the students know exactly what we're working on. Our teachers have the opportunity, since this is a new assessment, to norm the assessments together as a grade level team with the rubric. That way we are getting they're having that discussion about it, then how can they improve their techniques when they're administering the assessment. So the assessment looks like a guided reading group. That would be with your teacher in a small group of 4. They have a book that they might all read separate. The teacher will go over it, like title, and talk about it in depth. And then they'll be given a question at the end. And that's where they send them off to just independently answer the question, look back in the book, what text do you have, and making that connection. So that's what we're using. So it's really personalized to their level, to what they're working on. We wanted it both to be very natural. What are the practices we're currently doing, and how can we improve them for our student learning? So we've got it science and social studies. Our social studies and science tools that we have are perfect and really allow that deep understanding the CER model to be implemented there. And our exploratory team, that is their KDAB goal, is how can they implement more responses and reflection opportunities in the written format. So any questions for Stuart's plan?
Could you tell us what CER stands for?
Yeah. So C is cite or answer. So for our younger ones, they know answer. So cite, E, evidence, and then R is reasoning. But for the younger kids, we talk about what is that connection and thinking about a personal connection, because they may not understand really the reasoning part of it. But our older kids use reasoning.
Okay.
So that is CER.
Got it. Thank you.
So what type of support are you providing for the teachers in implementing? Because I know you set an aggressive goal, and I
Yeah.
hate to just be like, hey, go out there and do this. Can you
Right.
give examples of how you're supporting them?
Yeah, we have, so our Fontes and Pinnell curriculum, or our instructional tool that we have, because we go off our proficiency-based tables to help guide us. So we use our instructional tool that then we got in 2020. And so we really are just taking the time to provide teachers work time with either one of us or a coach to just dive in. So we showed them on the card, it's a really great tool to use that has great steps to follow. So we have those PDs. We have them by choice and by, we're having an all required one. We're working on just those check-ins in conferencing. We're having PD just when they're having those guided reading groups, ensuring that they're really following all the best strategies and getting the most out of students when they're questioning or going through a book. So those are a couple of the ways we're supporting the teachers for sure. And they came up with this goal with us. So this was kind of really a team all together goal. Because I wanted to know what would be good for you? We both were
how can we support you? This is a tool that you're using. How can we dive deeper into that? And they helped come up with the rubric. They helped come up with, like, that's why we're norming. They came up with, you know, some Q&As now for next time when we norm, so that they can help each other out. So it's an all-in, whatever they need, they're asking for it, and we're here to support them.
So this might be a question for Dr. Mum, or either one of you, but because this is my second SIP goal, and kudos to you, Mrs. Aversa, for last year, because you knocked it out of the park, as I recall, with achieving your goal. But are we measuring the other subjects? Because like mathematics, for example, like we hear about ELA, and I get that that's an area where we struggle and you know, where we can improve. But I also am not concerned, but cognizant of the fact that we don't want those other subjects to fall by the wayside. So are we measuring that beginning of the year, or whatever your 2 data points are?
Yep, we have type 2 assessments, which a type 2 assessment is an assessment that is common for anyone that teaches that job alike. So for all second grades, we have type 2 assessments in reading comprehension, which is a Rigby assessment. And so we look at reading fluency, reading comprehension, and reading accuracy with Rigby. And that is done in a pre-post format every year. And then, so we look at that in September, and then we look at it at the end of the year, and then we compare what % of our students have met the expected end of the year benchmark in reading. We also have a type 2 assessment for writing genres. We have it in narrative, we have it in informational, and then this year we'll also have it in opinion. And so we'll know, based on the Lucy Calkins writing rubric, what % of our students fell into what category or grade equivalency for those 3 genres in writing. Last year we only had narrative because we only did that genre. This year we made the decision to do a post-assessment in every genre in writing. And then we have always had, I think since 2007, a type 2 assessment in math, which assesses each one of the domains in math. And so we can break down the assessment to see not only the composite in math of where are students in overall math from pre to post, but then we can also break it down like just in addition, just in geometry, just in measurement, just in multiplication, just in place value. And those are the data points that we share in the summer. I know this summer we gave them more in summary format and not in detail format. We gave what % students were meeting grade level expectation rather than the specifics within each domain. But we do have all of the detail format of the % of students in the exact domain on all of those type 2 assessments. And then we, of course, have our iReady in reading and in math as well. So yep, all of that is what the MTSS coordinators and myself look at about monthly, because the math domains we can look at almost monthly because some take them as a pre as they get to that domain or a post as they finish that domain. And so as data is coming in throughout the school year, we're constantly looking. And then we do have data dives where we pull all MTSS staff and administrators for data dives through our collaborative inquiry process. And we put all of the charts around and say, what do you see? And who should we talk to and investigate of what's going well in your classroom? And I just sent out the emails of here's who we need to investigate and have a conversation because their data has something going, you know, really well. We want to find out what's happening in that classroom that's different than other classrooms. You know, is it a different type of use of instructional materials, or was conferring different? And so we send our collaborative inquiry group out to have those conversations with staff.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, then on to Blackberry Creek.
This year we are focusing on math, and what we are looking for is for all the grades, each individual grade to have a percentage of 70% or higher on their post-assessment for the addition and subtraction domain. How do I? All right, cool.
That's why Connor's here.
This is how I'm just vibing. Getting myself some time here.
Got it back.
There we go.
Just the arrow's not that tough one.
Okay. You know what? You just So, as I was saying, we are looking for all grade levels to have their average grade level score to be 70% or higher in the post-assessment for the addition and subtraction domain. Take two. Here we go. Last spring and early fall, when our SIT team looked at our building data, we could see that our math scores have declined. And as we dove deeper into that, we could track that the students who did not show proficiency in that place value and then the addition and subtraction domain tended to not show proficiency in the future domains that come after that. And then when our IAR results came in, the teachers like to look at who their kids were last year. And to be honest, some of the conversation was, wow, I really thought they were going to do better than they did. We didn't have as many as we thought meet and exceed as where we thought they would be in indicating that level of success. And while IAR is focused on all of the mathematical standards, we can't focus on all of them in a school year, especially when it's tied to the teacher evaluations like we were talking about. We really have a shorter time frame for that data collection. So that's why we decided to focus on the addition and subtraction domain as the data collection, but then we have embedded the place value domain in our action plan. So we are already knee deep in the in the place value domain and embarking on the addition and subtraction. I'm not going to read all of this in the list, but so again, like I said, we are focusing on that place value domain, embedding that into our action plan, and some of the non-negotiables that the SIT team and Mr. Tinkersley and myself worked on was flexibly grouping for all of the grade levels in math. So as students are taking those pre-assessments, we are sorting them out by score, and then we also designed our kind of building schedule to make sure that we had the MTSS teachers being able to push into those classrooms that need the most support. So we really are trying to flood those rooms with as much support as we possibly can. But then on also the other side, because we are flexibly grouping those students who are showing proficiency in those math standards, we are able to continue moving them along on that math continuum. We also have built in a non-negotiable, the daily spiral review. So every day they are reviewing skills. Either at this stage of the game in the year is sometimes those previous grade level skills, so that we make sure that they are still having that foundational knowledge. And then as the year goes on, that spiral review morphs into the current grade level skills and continue on. But so that we are keeping those skills fresh. It's not a once you've learned it and tested on it, we've moved on and we're not going to circle back to them. Historically speaking, without doing those things, we don't see them have the retention that we want them to have. We need them to keep practicing those skills as we go along. We talked about, and then also ties into feedback as well as the district all-in goal with our proficiency-based tables. And instead of just like, yes, you got that answer correct, walk us through how you got that answer. How did you arrive there? And getting the students to really talk about the steps that they're taking in math, not just solving those problems. And then in November, we are starting Fact Fluency Friday. The students don't know about it yet, so in case they're watching, I'm not going to spoil the surprise yet. That they're on. And then we are also utilizing our exploratory teachers on their open blocks outside of their plan time to help support the grade level with, if they feel comfortable with the skills that are being taught. They're obviously not math teachers or classroom teachers, but that they can support those, but they are also doing a big emphasis on supporting math facts. Really, if students don't know their math facts, it's just another hurdle that they have to overcome when they're trying to solve those multi-step problems. So if we can take that part off the plate for them, if they just know them automatically. So we're also putting an emphasis on that on a daily basis of working on math facts, but that are appropriate for their developmental level. So we're not, kindergartners aren't working on multiplication, they're working on 0 plus 2 and just trying to understand what addition truly means, and then moving up developmentally appropriate as we go on. Any
So
questions?
generally,
Yep.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, what is an addition subtraction domain for a fifth grader versus like the younger kids?
Yeah, so in kindergarten, they're really looking at what does addition mean? What does it mean to add something to another thing? And
Sure.
then by the time you get all the way up to fifth grade, we're looking up at those multi-digit whole numbers and then even going into adding and subtracting decimals.
Okay.
So you have from just learning what addition is all the way up to we're working on decimals and for money, lack of a better thing,
Yeah, that
associated
makes
like
sense.
that.
Okay, that's good, thank you. This might be a Dr. Mum question. Do we have a parallel to the FNP for math?
Not yet, that is why it's under curriculum review.
So I thought I read.
Knowing that the actual curriculum review for math was supposed to take place in 2028, but knowing, as we had been watching our math data over the course of the last 3 years and talking with staff through Educator Advisory Council,
Yeah.
we made the decision in the educational department to move that up to this year.
Okay.
Knowing that it couldn't wait 2 more years.
Yeah.
We are in a thorough review right now with a proposal coming to the board in April.
Okay.
They do have math supported tools. They can use My Math, Everyday Math, and Engage New York currently, which have materials to support all of our proficiency tables, but it is probably not one substantial solid scope and sequence that gives a newer staff member a very distinct pathway, as well as F&P does for reading.
Yeah, okay.
But looking at our team met today, and we have narrowed it down to 9 programs, and out of those 9 programs, all of them are probably, very, very good products that really give a nice focus. Our goal is to narrow that down, obviously, to 1 product that we will bring for a possible purchase in April.
Are you seeking feedback beyond your team? I mean, are you listening to?
We are, yeah. We actually have the team, and our team is made up of 34 teachers, and so it is a very large curriculum
so
review.
the team does include a staff.
But we also engage students in that conversation. Our goal is in December and January. They actually take products back in December, January, and February and use it with students, and then students fill out a survey that they bring back to the committee. From a student perspective, what did you like, what did you not like? And then we also engage for parent feedback. If you saw something come home, what was your feedback in that? It does also go on public display for parents to come and look at for the 30 days before purchasing as well. I did reach out and had a conversation with a former district also that gave us 32 districts across Illinois and what they previously used. And then I also interviewed all of the districts in Kane County and then Sycamore and DeKalb as to what they're using and their level of satisfaction currently in their products.
Thank you.
Yep.
We don't have a formal science or social studies curriculum though, right?
We do.
Oh,
You
we
just
do.
approved
Okay.
2 years ago Science, the DEX platform, and that does have a scope and sequence with
that's
it.
right. Okay.
And then last year we approved Houghton Mifflin social science.
Oh, we use Houghton Mifflin. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other for me? I mean, us?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs.
That was my
Rosenberg.
fault.
All right, so I can stand up here with you.
No, it's okay. Just didn't want that to happen again.
Don't use the top one.
All right, thank you. Good. All right, our school improvement plan goal at John Shields centers around reading this year, specifically increasing the number of students reading at and above grade level reading expectation. Last year we did have a very similar goal, which we exceeded, and why that is a celebration. This is a data-driven goal, and looking at the data, we thought there was an opportunity to build upon that success of last year's goal and make those scores and those number of students even greater this year. One thing to note is while the number on the screen shows 9%, again, that number is for the purpose of teacher and administrator evaluation. We do plan to continue this goal throughout the entire school year, with a projected average being 13.5% by the end of the year. Last year, like I said, we exceeded our goal of 9% or greater, and then when we do exceed our goal again this year, that would mean that within 2 years we have increased the number of students reading at and above grade level by over 20% in 2 years, which is a huge celebration. The rationale for this is that reading fluency and comprehension are critical skills that span across all content areas and are really lifelong skills for students, for a learner for their entire year. So how do we plan to do this? These are just some of our action items, and I'm just going to highlight on a few of them tonight. This year we began our guided reading instruction earlier than ever. All of our grade levels began small group instruction by September 3rd. We have increased throughout the year opportunities to check where our students are at, increasing data points, doing more one-on-one checks. Are our students reading at grade level? Yes? No? Okay, if they are, what's their next step? If they're not, how can we get them to where they need to be? We have also conducted staff instructional rounds. That's our teachers are going into other teachers' classrooms and observing what are you doing during reading? What are you doing during other subject areas? And what does your feedback look like? So they're learning from each other as well. We also took an action item from John Stewart as far as really making our students aware of the goal. So at the beginning of the year, we had grade level assemblies where we shared our goal and asked students for feedback on action items to work toward our goal. We just shared a video today with progress on our goal with students, and we have a bulletin board in the school too, so that students can see how are we doing on our goal, how close are we to our end of the year goal. We are also connecting that writing piece with our reading this year and increasing opportunities for students to write about their reading as well. And the last thing I'll highlight now is we just had a dark and scary reading night last week. So it's a good opportunity for families to engage in reading with their students and teachers. Any questions on our goal? All right, thank you.
Good evening. This is McDowell's SIP plan here this evening. It's extremely similar to our SIP plan from last year. For those of you who don't recall, we did not meet proficient last year within our writing SIP goal. And one of the things upon reflection of our building SIP goal as a full team last year was a little bit of feeling of we were farther along than what our data showed. So a lot of our SIP goal, while the goal remains intact, there have been some specific changes to really enhance the work that we're doing. Specifically, the way in which we are diving deeper across the building within writing, as well as a more personalized approach within each grade level. And I'll share a little bit of that when we get to some of the action items. Specifically to our rationale, writing at McDowell over the course of the last several years has been an area of, in looking at the data, a significant area of need. Last year we actually increased the amount of writing instructional time to 60 minutes. To provide extra emphasis within those areas. And we continue to see a need of writing across the board, and it is a college and career readiness skill, but also something that we want to see our students continue to grow in. Most notably, as we look through the action plans, this is where we've really put the meat on the bones this year. Having a SIP plan that has remained the same, similar from last year to this year, has allowed us to dive deep into what we are doing. We've taken lessons learned last year as a building and within specific grade levels, and those teams are diving deep. Most notably, if you look at their KDAB processes and grade level writing collaboration with themselves and with their instructional coaches, they've taken the lessons learned last year and began to develop goals and action items within their grade level that are personalized for their student needs. They have Yes, sir.
Question for you. I know Dr. Mumm shared what KDAB was in the original introduction. For those of us that may have forgotten, can you remind us what that stands for?
Yeah, KDAB is Kaneland Data Analysis Blitz. It's in essence where a team sits down and looks at an area of a challenge or a problem and establishes a goal and a plan of how they're going to work to achieve that also has a measurable data points with it. They typically set that as a team. With the assistance of administration or an instructional coach. KDAB meetings take place at least once a month within grade level teams traditionally, where they track data and progress within those. Specifically to KDAB processes at the start of this year, the bulk of all of our teams have chosen to do a writing KDAB goal that focuses on something that their grade level is looking to dive more deeply into, and that's personalized for their grade level needs. Now, specifically different from last year to compared to this year is teams have been able to establish a little bit more of a team-specific timeline. Whereas last year we had a pre, a mid, and a post at all of the same times, that's not how we teach writing with different grade levels, and that was a lesson that we learned. So grade level teams have a little bit different of a timeline of when they may establish that pre, mid, and post, based off of also to not be teaching one specific unit all the way from September to February, but it allows them to personalize the needs and build up through that KDEB process where they might want to grow. We've also seen a lot of grade level teams dive deeper into that feedback and conferring process through not only the feedback SIP goal that we have established as a district, but also in the way in which teachers confer with students on their progress. We have some grade levels working off of a collaborative electronic conferring document where others have more of a paper base, but allows consistency in making sure that teachers are conferring and meeting with each and every one of our students so that they're supported in that writing process. And then we've also continued to utilize the writing proficiency tables to drive not only the instruction, but how we're conferring and what we're connecting to with students through that writing process. So far this year overall, we're really excited about the work that is happening, and more than anything, teams have more of an empowered approach to how we're diving deep into supporting writing with all of our McDowell students. Questions? Awesome.
I'm glad to hear. Everybody does a great job, but we always hear these wonderful things, and then it's actually kind of interesting to see one not come through all the way, because I do think the lessons learned from that are sometimes more powerful, right? So I'm glad to hear the process that you have implemented in order to kind of course correct. So that's very interesting to me. Not to say that all you guys succeeding aren't good too. That's good too. But it's just an interesting thing for me. So I appreciate the process that you've gone through.
Thank you. I will turn it over to Mrs. McCoy. And I'm going to put the very...
Good evening. We have a new school improvement goal for Ignite. One of the challenges that a school that has represents grades 3 through 8 is having a common goal for students in those grade levels. As the principal and all of us, we represent our school improvement teams, which are made up of teachers and representatives in our school, which is awesome. At Ignite, I get the benefit of having almost the entire staff be part of that school improvement team. So that's an experience that I feel really lucky to have that I haven't had in any of the other 4 elementary schools that I've worked in the district. So one of the goals for us, right, it's the one on the right? Okay. Our process really was looking at it with our teachers is like, what would be the thing that we could all focus in on? And ultimately what we were looking for is how can we improve students' thinking? And typically the way you kind of understand what students are thinking is through some sort of assessment or talking to them, but also in their written work. And so similar to Stewart's school improvement plan, we're looking at that CERC, that rubric, and ours is focusing on the claim. So students would make a claim and then support that claim with evidence and then reasoning for that. And we're looking at that in their written expression in ELA, but transferring that into all the other content areas. This afternoon I was talking to a gentleman who was writing a CER in social sciences and was using some AI features that we needed to talk through a little bit more differently. But it's happening in science classes, social sciences, even math, and ELA classes. So that's really quite powerful. The gamble here is that we don't have baseline data. We don't have years and years of tried and true evidence and data that we can have. So our school is shooting high. We're saying that we're asking 75% of the students to improve 3 points on the CER. Each one of those points represents a grade level growth. So that baseline was collected in September, and we're collecting that data in February. That goal will go on to the end of the year. We're using about 4 to 6 week cycles of just kind of checking in with students to see how they improve or how their growth is going, and then using those little check-ins to kind of guide our instruction to tailor that for the students. It's possible this could be a multi-year goal. You might hear me saying this again next year, so that'd be kind of fun.
I like that you're shooting high. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Any other questions?
And you added a C at the end.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
The other C?
The other C is conventions. I think that's like sort of the traditional like teacher in all of us, that we'd like our students to right, so that we can understand that the way you organize your sentences has a meaning for that too, and that they should start with capital and end with a period, and, you know, have some subject, noun, predicate kind of things going on in there too. So there's, so the nice thing is that this rubric goes from, I think, 2nd to beyond 8th grade, so that we can have the range for students that are in our school and move them beyond. Thank you.
Harder. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. Whew. Whew.
Connor.
I said I wouldn't be my typical self up here. Hey, let's talk Harder Middle School, the greatest middle school in the world. Well, Kipling is just with us on that one as well, right? So we have a reading goal, and what I want to do is just give you a little bit of background knowledge of why we came up with this goal and why we decided reading. So this actually started last year, and our instructional coaches put out a needs assessment to our teachers, and vocabulary was something that they said they would like some PD on. And when you look at some of our vocabulary scores overall, we can probably get better, right? Our reading scores are doing well. I mean, we're far above the national average. However, we also wanted a goal that we felt was relevant for every single teacher in the building. And vocabulary is that, right? No matter what class you go in, math, reading, music, health, we all have vocabulary, we all teach literacy skills. So we decided then this is how we're going to build our reading goals. We're going to look at iReady. And so we've been doing iReady. This is hard to believe, since 2018. And every year they give us data that says this is the percentage of students that should meet their expected growth target in reading. And so this is actually a year-long goal. It's 44% is what iReady, the trend data, tells us, is that 44% of our students should meet that expected growth target. So since we're cutting this off, the last week of January will be the assessment we take. So I just cut that 44 and a half, and that's how I got to the 22. So the one thing I always like to point out, though, too, is the fact that sometimes you look at it and you say 44%, boy, we can do better than that. Well, we can, but we already have a lot of students that score at the top echelon in reading. And so they don't, it's going to be very difficult for them to actually meet expected growth because they're already there. So iReady knows this, and that's how they create this trend data for us. So it was pretty nice. It's a pretty sweet deal. Kind of already went over the rationale, but as far as the action plans, we want to look at this as a whole. What are we doing for all students and not just focusing on a certain subgroup? And so, as I stated earlier, it started really last year with that needs assessment. And so our instructional coaches put on a variety of professional development during the school day. One of them, as I said, was vocabulary. This is kind of how it spawned, but that professional development is for everyone. And then what we have is student services, MTSS teachers that push into team meetings, curricular meetings. So we're looking at data as a whole, as an entire building, but we're also looking at data on an individual basis as well. Like what students need extra support. That's where MTSS is going to push into classrooms. Sometimes we take them out and do small group or individual. But again, it's this holistic, we're trying to make sure that we meet every student's needs. No matter if they score at the top echelon, because we want to extend them and we want to push them as much as possible, all the way down to students needing more support. How are we doing that? You know, as I said, through MTSS. So those are really our action plans to push that growth with the expected growth target in iReady reading. Questions?
Mr. Faulkner, what is a differentiated lesson? What does that mean?
It's so, a good example is based on learning styles. So we have the same goal, and I might give you 5 different options of how you can choose to get there. So you might be a visual learner, so you want to put together like a presentation.
Okay, so it's just based on learning styles. So
Correct.
It's different for everyone.
It can be, yeah, that's one example.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Is the vocabulary like general vocabulary, or is it like content specific?
General.
Okay, so it's more general.
And a lot of it is just learning how to understand or figure out a word from context.
Okay.
Is what we've dove into a little bit more. It really is. I mean, there's that need. I guess I need. Boy, I hope I'm a part of that 44%, aren't I? But no, I mean, it's something that we look at where, yes, you need that vocabulary background walking into a unit or,
Yes.
you know, when we're studying proficiency tables, but it's also when I'm reading something, if I don't understand this word, I'm probably not going to be able to understand it completely. So then it's a little variety of both.
Yeah, I dig that because I would think, right, a lot of content, specific content, is already complicated. You're learning vocabulary. You're learning mitochondria and whatever.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And now you don't know this word either, right?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. Yeah. So it makes sense to me. So that's a good goal.
I'm going to go dive into my seat here. Hey, did it right. Sorry. Man, I said I wasn't going to be me. All right.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Let's see if I get it right this time. Oh, I did. Awesome. All right, so Kaneland High School. A little background for why we chose this goal. It's based off of personalized pathways for college and career readiness. So Dr. Horn introduced you guys to the PACE guide last board meeting. It's based off of that. All students, 9th through 12th grade, actually take a needs assessment every year at the end of February. So we kind of looked at that data and saw that a lot of students, over 50%, really struggled to and want help in college and career readiness skills and how to figure out what they want to do post-secondary. So to me, that was kind of like, this is something that we really need to do and implement at our high school, because that not only when we know what we're going to do, like with our life, we buy into school more, right, and find math, science, whatever subjects that much more interesting and get into. So, so that's what we chose this goal towards college and career readiness. So a little bit about our rationale. Also, like Dr. Horn mentioned last board meeting, the PACE framework is going to be required by the state of Illinois. So how can we best expose students and staff and parents to this framework and make it accessible and understandable to all and help them out post-secondary. So we've been doing some surveys, action plan. So we've been doing some surveys to our students through homeroom to kind of ramp up what we will give out in November to get them ready to choose their course selection. That actually opens up this Friday for high school students. But really our counselors start meeting with them in December, and there we will be personalizing all of that. So we've taken a lot of different action steps to help our students and our parents understand what courses are. If children and students pick out courses that best fit them, then they're that much more successful too in those classes. But how we're going to monitor that too is we're going to continue to monitor our freshmen on track, because we want to make sure they're on track and make sure that they are being successful in their courses. We're going to continue to collect data on our enrollment in our AP dual credit and CTE classes. We gave out a needs assessment in the fall, but we'll be giving out one in the wintertime and then the spring for measurements of that. And we're using our PACE framework that we already came up with to kind of help guide all of that. We are just completed the course description guide, which you guys will hear at the next board meeting. And we've changed some things, but we also are trying to make that a little bit easier to read, so it doesn't quite read like something that's a little bit harder to digest or understand all the courses and offerings that we have at the high school. And we're going to supply supplemental materials, hopefully that we'll have that available to you guys at the next board meeting, that really dives into our CTE classes and pathways, so that parents and students understand, if I take this class and I take these classes here, I can get this certificate, I can get this dual credit, I can get these things forward post-secondary. So, any questions? Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm old enough to believe in delegating. Thanks for your help. Thank you. For those of you in high school who are watching, starting Friday, you can sign up for Fox Valley. Remember that. At least tickets. So thank you guys for the opportunity. Always a pleasure to be here. I look at you as a captive audience, so I get to tell you about Fox Valley, and I like that. So This is good. Just a couple of quick thank yous. Thank you to the high school staff, and we really appreciate your working with us. And we had a little incident today, and it was nice to have a whole team show up. Chief Tyndall, it was really nice to have you as part of that. Don't make it a habit, okay? Appreciate it. But thank you to Caneville and to our other first responder partners. You guys have been out helping teach in EMT and doing some things, and we appreciate that as well. And just as a background for you guys, Fox Valley works with 6 school districts in the area. And so our school improvement plan is based on our strategic plan, which is approved by those 6 districts. So it's a little broader pool, and that's why it doesn't quite look like Kaneland's. So we're kind of that Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the others. But it's important to us that our goals reflect the needs of our students, not just for Kaneland, but for all of our students in the Fox Valley. And so we have a continuation goal with growth, but our goal, if you take a look at this, really is that our students will continue to have more and more opportunities for work-based learning. Ultimately, our goal is that every one of our students in a 2-year block with us would have the opportunity for an internship, an apprenticeship, serious job shadowing. We really want everybody, if they're interested in a career, to get a chance to expand that. So our first year goal was just that 60%, and our second year goal is 20. Last year that was 50 and 10. You're really fast, you know, I know.
I'm trying to keep you moving.
Yeah.
I'm getting the hint, okay. One of the things that allows us to do, though, is that we have literally thousands of alumni, and then we have, currently this year, we're working with 156 business partners in the greater Fox Valley area. So not just Kaneland, but we do survey those, we talk to those people, we go out and take field trips. We talk to them about getting our students placed and having opportunities. And we've really, one of our focuses in terms of the action plans has been to expand that to look at some municipalities. So for instance, we have students right now who are interning with the Kane County Regional Office of Education with their tech department. And they're pulling wires, they're installing some different systems. We even have somebody writing some code for the county. And so, you know, that's a chance, and we're using that as a springboard to get into some more municipalities. We just met with St. Charles the other day with their municipal departments as well. So again, our goal is to give our students as much of an opportunity for real world experience as possible. The other part of that is just the expectation when we look at our goals. And we, because it's an evaluative piece, we have an all-in goal, and that's what I just shared with you. But each of our departments, each of our programs has their own specific goal, which is also a student learning goal. And in some cases, that's the dual credit piece. Some cases, it's certification. So maybe our cybersecurity students are going to try to earn cybersecurity certification. Our law enforcement class, one of the goals they were just working on was how to effectively and safely cuff prisoners for transport. And so I was just participating in being locked up with the chains around my feet and waist and ushered out of the building safely and put in a squad car. They take great delight in that, and I don't know why that is. But it's a really good experience. It's good firsthand experience if they're interested in that field, and so they got some correction specific kinds of things. So all-in goal is general. Specific goals are really program related. I tried to be fast.
You're very good.
For me, this is good. So, questions? Before I go, because I have you, I gave you an open house flyer. So November 7th, Thursday. Thank you, Mrs. Simmons. We have an open house coming up. And so that's community-wide. We will be at that open house event giving away a Ford F-150, and we'll be giving away a computer system. It's a 2004. Don't get your hopes up too high, but it's in beautiful shape, okay? Only 133,000 miles. So anyway, but feel free to come and do that. And then there'll be demonstrations in all of our programs throughout the evening. And if you really want to see fire, I believe 6:30, 7, and 7:30, there'll be large masses of fire available for your personal consumption as well. So, thank you.
Any final questions? Just to reiterate, they will return in our summer session to tell you the end kind of goal and if they had met their school improvement. It does conclude in that February, March timeframe, but many of them, they collect it through May. So you'll see in that summer session their February goal and their formal answer of meeting their SIP goal, but then they also often report how it ended at the end of the year as well. We will look for, there is no action today, but there will be a consent, I believe, next month of just approving the all-in goal and then the building SIP goals.
So if there's any questions between now and the next next meeting when it comes on consent, please forward any of those questions for consideration from Ed Services or the principal.
So I don't want to speak for everybody, so correct me or whatever, but I like this idea that we started this conversation at the beginning, this idea of the correlation between these internal assessment methodologies and external ones. I know you guys will come back, I think, a couple times in the year,
Yep.
right? So I would like to see more of that conversation and maybe more of how we're going to connect those things as we continue. But again, I don't know if that's like, I don't have to like thumbs up that or vote.
No,
for
I
it or
agree
whatever.
wholeheartedly. I think we're looking overall to move the needle, and while I appreciate the fact that we're looking internally, I think we need to, like you said, correlate the two and somehow, build them together. And so I know it's easier for me to sit here in my chair and say, let's do this rather than implement it, but I think that that's expectations that we have to some extent. I mean, at least a couple of us, most of us, all of us, I don't know.
Yep.
So, yeah. Thank you to
Yes.
everyone that came by tonight and presented. It was awesome. We enjoyed it. I really look forward to seeing the results. So, best of luck. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I'm gonna take this opportunity to let you guys know it's an open meeting, and I know you have families to get home to. So, you're welcome to stay. But,
Thank you.
yeah, if you wanna.
They're all leaving. Thank you, everybody.
So there's no action necessary tonight on the SIP update. So we will move forward to the fourth item of new business, which is the approval of the alignment of written and oral translation pay rates.
Yep, thank you. I will turn that over to Dr. Atkins. Thank you, President Gonzalez. Turn it over to Dr. Atkins for a quick update and then a rationale for this request.
Thank you. So the board may or may not recall, but every year we approve a variety of rates, typically late spring, early summer, sub rates, homebound tutor rates and all that. Included in that is 2 different translation rates for our students and families. One is written translation. Everything that we send home that's of district importance or district notifications needs to be translated in writing. And then also oral translation. The oral translation is for parent-teacher conferences, IEP meetings, those kinds of things. We have had 2 rates separate, written and oral. Those have been in place for decades, and so I'm not quite sure the difference between them. I believe because written requires more intensity and someone has to sit down and type that out. However, what we've come to learn in recent weeks and months is that the oral translation field is changing a little bit, and those services are requiring more investment of our dollars to procure those services. Specifically for niche languages, Vietnamese, Urdu, some of those kinds of things where, just in terms of a candidate pool, we have a strong candidate pool for Spanish translation services. We have a very small and limited candidate pool for those niche services. So I did some work, looked at some of our regional comparatives, some service providers, so like contract agencies, local districts, to kind of find out what the going rate is. It's anywhere from $50 to $150 depending on the type of specificity you're looking for. And so in looking at those 2 levels of services, we're not getting oral translators at $25 an hour. We need to realign that rate. The local service provider is just right at that $50 mark. So I'm here to request and ask for the board to approve that rate increase to $50 an hour from 25. It seems like a lot, but for this particular field and the services required, it's important we cannot rely on a first grader to translate for their parents at parent-teacher conferences in 3 weeks. We have to have someone who can translate those important messages for our families. So, as you often hear me say, this is not a must-do. This is a best practice we should please help us request. So, if you have questions, I'd be happy to take them. But
Dr.
hopefully
Atkins,
a relatively simple request.
Based on the feedback you just shared, is this primarily a parent-teacher feedback, IEP conference, those types of things, so it's not regular ongoing position, it's just, like you use the word niche?
Yeah, as needed. So it's not a position, it's not an FTE, it's I need to have a 30-minute conversation with a family, they speak this language, who do we have available? We call, our ELL coordinator would call them and say, I'm looking for a translator for this type of conversation on this day and time, are you available? And then we pay them that rate to come in and do it. If it is an hourly rate, but if it's a half an hour of time, then we pay them in a prorated fashion.
So I was going to ask what would be the cost to outsource, but if I'm hearing right, we're already outsourcing this?
Technically we're outsourcing it. When you talk about outsourcing in my world, that means a contract agent.
Yeah.
Contract agent would be that, I think the most economical contract agent is from DuPage County, and they're about $65 an hour, keeping in mind that the translator themselves does not get $65 an hour because of the company's overhead. So that's why the $50 an hour rate, we're like, why are we undercutting the translation services? Because that's actually what the translator gets. They take their 15 an hour off the top for their services, and then the translator themselves gets the 50.
Dr. Atkins, I
Yes,
have
sir.
2 questions. Would Spanish translation be bumped up to 50 an hour too, and is that the market rate, or?
Any oral translation would be, we're not going to do it by language like that. It would be any oral translation, any written translation would be that $50 an hour rate.
Okay.
And then the second part.
Oh, my second question would be, I don't know if you can answer this, but about how many non-Spanish
You know what, it ebbs and flows. It also depends on what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the type of translation. So written translation, when we do lawn care applications and we send out the notice that those all get translated, but we have to translate it into the language that's our primary second language, Spanish.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to parent-teacher conference, for a child from Vietnam or a child from another country that's more of a niche language, that isn't something that would be done en masse, so we do have to specialize for that.
Just curious, why wouldn't the Spanish rate be lower? Like, what's the rationale for?
I don't believe that there's probably a variety of reasons for that. I don't believe in the field we separate this language from that language.
Sure.
I would imagine there'd probably be some things we'd run afoul of in terms of the types of language that are paid less versus the types of language that are paid more, just in terms of equity.
Yeah, and I don't want to imply that we're trying to do that. I was more of a supply and demand kind of thing, and I wasn't trying to.
Yeah, and I think the supply and demand factor, to be very honest with you, Dr. Lawler, is why the oral translation rate has been lower. Because until of late, the primary and maybe even sole language of translation has been Spanish.
Sure.
And it's been more recently in the past couple of years where we've started to see more of those niche languages.
As we diversify, we have.
Yep.
So are we able to get Spanish translators at the lower rate?
We have been, but that is getting harder.
I'm just wondering if we have those one-off or two-off Vietnamese, we pay the 65. I mean, where's the cost savings for the district? I know we're talking pennies, but pennies.
I think it would probably require the identification of what those niche languages are, knowing that, again, there'd probably be a couple of facets to this that I'd need to look into on behalf of the board before we could say, all right, these languages we're only going to pay so much for, but sorry, you're from this other country, so we're not going to pay you as much. I worry about that dynamic, and I don't know enough because we didn't look into that. We said, what is oral? We just looked at it as oral and written translation. So if the board would like us to do that, we could, but I'm a little.
Well, I guess And
The other-
this doesn't have to be answered tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm curious on what the line item is total for this set of services.
Yeah, so we
I imagine it's not very large.
I was actually surprised. I asked that question leading
Oh.
into this. We budget about $50,000 a year for translation services. Most
Okay,
of that
I
is
thought
the
we
written
asked this.
translation.
That's not what I thought the number.
It fluctuates year to year. It fluctuates based on who the students are and what they need. So we may have a student with a niche language this year that requires, or maybe new to the country, requires a lot of oral translation. And then the next year, mom and dad don't need as much oral translation.
Yeah, so,
You know what I mean? So
we just sidebarred a little bit. You double that now. That's 100. I mean, that's not that's not something to sneeze at. That's an actual number.
It could.
Maybe it is worth checking out if there should be some variation in this.
It could be, and the challenge, I did ask that question, like how could we predict that increase?
Yeah.
We don't have a good way to do that.
Okay.
Because it varies based on the family and the students and their language proficiency of the parents, which we have no way to measure or gauge.
Well, and I think based on the types of conversations we're having, excuse me, and in some cases legal conversations if you're doing IEPs and whatnot, this may be a space where we don't want to, use the Groupon, right? Like, I think we should make sure that we're hiring the right people so that we're serving the needs of our community and making sure that the right message is getting through.
So I know, as I'm assuming, again, I don't have educational background, but you want people to physically come here versus doing the model of like having a service like a computer, like we do in healthcare. Do schools go that way and outsource a company and that, like I know in healthcare you can press and you get whatever language you need and that person comes. So is there like something like that for schools?
Yeah, my understanding is the one company that I referred to with that at the $65 an hour rate that some of our districts to the east of us utilize, it's virtual services like that, so you don't get someone in person, which works. It may not be preferable, but they are those out
They
there.
don't have to come here
Yeah.
versus being virtual, but it's not okay.
And so I will say, even bumping this rate up, this is still significantly lower than if we do have to go to contract agency for either oral or written services. And so I think that was really the rationale behind bumping up the oral rate for all languages, that it positions us to better able to attract people that we can hire directly on an as-needed basis versus having to go to that contract agency. Where, especially for some of the hard-to-find languages, it can be significantly more because the contract agency can charge that premium for those languages that aren't necessarily spoken everywhere.
Correct.
Will this $50 give us that ability to also find those high-demand?
Yeah, we do have a pool of people that I believe will be able to fill all of our niche oral translation needs.
So you feel that this will give us savings overall?
I would not be comfortable saying that it would be a savings overall until we did a little bit more. But I do know that that number would fluctuate year to year depending on what the languages are, depending what the individual student or family needs were. And that's something we could.
Yeah. It would be a savings compared to paying a middleman $15 an hour to orchestrate those services. So comparatively, there'd be a savings, but again, that piece, we have spent less than that $50,000 budgeted line item in the past. We've spent more. Again, it depends on the students. We could have a family move in next week that turns all of this on its head significantly, or not. We could have families move. We could have families get their own proficiency with language. We can definitely impact the students' language acquisition. It's a little bit harder to impact the parents' language acquisition. Sometimes very often, a family member will move in later or come to the country later who is fluent and then takes over those needs for us. It's a very difficult, hard to pin down piece because it is a moving target often.
I just feel personally very uncomfortable doubling a pay raise for something that has assumably been working for the past 5 years.
Right.
And I understand raising it for non-Spanish languages, but I don't understand doubling it for a service that we already have at half the cost.
I tend to say, by now I know you, and I know you wouldn't come ask if you didn't have a legitimate ask out of it.
Mhm.
But also from the perspective of simple of economics and, you know, supply and demand, I'd imagine that the bulk of them are Spanish speakers, which I'd imagine there are plenty out there. So I know there's going to be that one-off, and I don't want to pretend to say some obscure language because I don't know my geography, or my languages, I guess I should say, like I should. But if 75%, 80% of our translators are Spanish, and we're willing to get them at this rate, then maybe, I don't know, that's just where my head is. It's like a business decision for me. I don't put my business hat on.
Do you have numbers showing, like, I'm struggling, like, you know, I was able to get people before, but now I'm struggling to get, you know, because of this cost? What triggered you to?
The specific instance that triggered me is we have a Vietnamese family that we don't have a translator for. We have a translator who's available but will not do it for the current $25 an hour rate. So we are beholden at, you know, we're kind of stuck. And I can't have a first grader translate her parent-teacher conference to her parents.
Is this one of these, and forgive me for not knowing, is this one of these positions where we have to give you exact dollars, or can we give you the authority to negotiate these dollars?
That could be maybe an up to.
Yeah.
The recommendation could be changed to up to.
How's that?
That would provide the flexibility, Mr. Cook, that you're looking for.
Yeah.
That is more of that economic-based, supply and demand, vendor-based component, but then also give me the latitude to acquire people, and then in the meantime, in the interim, we can also kind of identify that these are the niche ones that might demand the higher rate, and then these are ones where the available pool of translators is such that, I'm sorry, it just doesn't demand the higher rate.
I'd feel more comfortable.
Yeah, I was gonna say, hopefully it'll give you more flexibility too, of like, if you do start finding Spanish-speaking translators are like, hey, I want more than $25, and they're saying no to you, then that's something to show to us too, that hey, you know what, that number's just not good enough for them either, you know, and so you have to adjust, but that would give you that little bit of space to do that.
I would absolutely welcome the ability to have kind of that up to language. So when I look at that, the board approved the translation rates up to $50 an hour. Something as simple as that would be very helpful to me. It still accomplishes what we need for those niche goals, gives us the immediacy to get translation services in place for parent-teacher conferences in 3 weeks, 2 weeks. At the same time, also allows me to respond to the market and maybe not do that when the supply and demand of the candidate pool is such that we don't need to.
I like it.
Well, it's fresh in my mind. Any further discussion, or? Okay, I'm gonna throw this out there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll go slow, Julie, because I'm slow myself. Bob, excuse me, Mr. Mankivsky, did you have anything?
Not really, unless you need a Polish translator or Czech. Doubtful. Did that at Dundee Crown.
Okay. Okay, well then, at this point, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the ability of staff to pay up to $50 per hour for oral translation effective 10/29/2024.
Change the word staff to administration.
Excuse me.
No, you're good. That works.
Go back again. I will entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the ability of administration to pay the oral, or to have the ability to pay up to $50 per hour for oral translation services effective 10/29/2024. Sorry.
Written
I'm good.
and oral, or just oral?
No, because written's already at.
Written's already at.
Just oral.
Yep.
This was aligning.
Yep. That works.
Okay. Second, or?
Second.
Second, or whatever.
All right, roll call, please. Did you get it, Julie?
Who made the motion?
So moved.
I got it. Are you ready for the roll call?
Yes, please.
Mr. McCauley? Dr. Lawler?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky?
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons? Aye. Mr. Cook?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Hopefully that
Very
helps.
helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Atkins.
We'll go ahead and, Dr. Rowling will introduce it, kick it off, and it may be a little more limited, but we can go ahead and move to the topic.
Okay, We're gonna go ahead and, will he not be here at all? Or
Nope,
do we have-
not at all.
Oh,
Not
he's
gonna be able to
not.
make it, correct.
Oh, okay.
So that may
That's gonna
change.
change
Yep,
things.
number
Yeah.
one in closed session.
Okay, well, the fifth item of new business is a discussion of the Crown Development Tax Increment Financing in Sugar Grove. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over directly to Dr. Rowling.
Yes, so, good evening. We were hoping that our attorney from Robin Schwartz, Mr. Flory, would be able to attend. Unfortunately, he is not able to attend this evening, but we do want to continue, have some conversation regarding the Sugar Grove TIF, update the board as to the communications that we've had with them, and have some discussion. So, do you want to hand out the handouts?
Yes.
So we're handing around.
Two handouts.
Go ahead and explain.
Sure, so we have two handouts that were shared by the Village of Sugar Grove. These are both available on their website. I can share the actual link to the website as well. But the first document is TIF revenue projections with their 80-20 split for this project. And then the second one is has the same split, but it's specific to payments from the school, for the school district that they've built into their plan. We did attend a meeting with the Village of Sugar Grove last week that was for all taxing bodies that are impacted by this, and so the village shared that information at that time. The gross revenue, as you can see at the bottom, that they're anticipating is $481,681,875. And so based on some of their projections, they came up with 25% of that is just over 90, or almost 96 million. And so that is what they're saying the district would be eligible for as part of tuition payments. That doesn't mean that it's actual, because we know that any tuition payments would be based on the number of students that are coming out of housing in the TIF. Their projections that they've used, that's just 25% of that incremental. And the reason they use that 25% and not numbers is because that's what the district is eligible for under the TIF law.
So it's important to note that's an up to number based on students emanating from the TIF at our tuition rate.
Correct. And they've used our current rate with some escalation in there to come up with these numbers. And so you'll see, right, if you look in year 4, that's the first year that they think there's any going to be gross incremental revenue. At $863,000, and so that's why they've come up, okay, 25% of that is $215,000, right? And so this is based on if the project is built out as their plan is laid out. In their plan, they do have this 80-20 split with the developer. So 80% will go to the developer, 10% is at village discretion, and in their plan, they've put 10% of the surplus aside for the taxing bodies, of which the school district is 70% of that. So if you look at the next page, they also shared this at the meeting, and so it goes through by calendar year, all the 23 years of the TIF. It takes the school tuition payments. Again, this is just based on 25% of that total gross increment, not based on essentially possible students that would come out. So like Dr. Rolring said, each of these years listed, that's an up to amount, not a guaranteed amount in any way. School impact fees, that is the dollar amount that they think will be generated by those residential permits that are listed. And then also the school land cash fees. In the column over where it says TIF 10% surplus, that is, that first column, that is the village owned, and then that last column, the school portion, of that 10% surplus, the school district makes up 70%. So as you can see, they're giving an estimate. If this were to develop under their plan, that's the dollar amount that the district could expect to receive. So under that 10%, they're estimating that we would receive $26,471,362. And then just over 1.5 million in land cash over the 23 years, and then 853,000 in those school impact fees.
So it's important to note that this is essentially their opening offer. We voted neutral when we went to the advisory committee.
Joint review board, yeah.
With the to position ourselves to negotiate. So this is not a excuse me. This is not a done deal. This is their projection, their offer. We are continuing working on a date to sit down with them and have some further discussion around this offering. And additionally, at the meeting last week, they shared that they believe, based on a letter of intent for the warehousing district, they shared that there's a data company that is interested in purchasing significant amounts of that warehouse district area, which would be largely the area north of the highway. They believe, based on that letter of intent, that some of those pieces that were set to go a little bit later may be moved up. If they are moved up, then all of these numbers could be escalated, because once they start paying taxes, it comes onto the rolls of the TIF. So those were a couple of things that they shared with us during that meeting. So what?
Right. None of their projections, at least towards Kaneland 302, are guaranteed. Were guaranteed. They did not. They provided projections, but no. They could have gotten the numbers of the city of different forces, and given their answers to questions, or their non-answers to questions when we queried them, a lot of this depends upon basic competence out of the village of Sugar Grove and those officials to pull this all together. And quite frankly, I have doubts. I mean, this is a pittance to the school district, to Kaneland. And, just my 2 cents.
So we're talking 95 million in tuition payments, from what I'm seeing here, correct?
Up to.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
I just want to be very clear on that, right?
Right, this is assuming best case scenario.
And that's, this projection, that 95 million is purely based on 25% of the TIF increment for that year. It's not, and that's where it's important. Any tuition payments that the district would actually receive would be the number of kids who came out of that area in any given year. So it could be 10 kids, it could be 20 kids, it could be 100 kids, it could be no kids. We are eligible to receive up to that amount, up to that 25%. That comes off first, and then it gets divided out after that. So I think that's where, we'd like to see, okay, well, how many homes do we anticipate? What are the actual numbers? If we know they're building 100 homes, then 2.5 school-age children, typically come out of, a house with this square footage and this many bedrooms, what does that, look like for us?
That's my question. I don't mean to interrupt you, but so, because we're getting flooded with all this information, and I've heard, well, this land will never be developed, and then I've heard that there have been offers made on this land, but it was blocked for whatever political reasons, and I don't know the truth, but let's say that a residential community came into this area and they put up 150 homes, and it only had 10 kids. We're looking at tax revenue from 150 homes regardless of kids, whereas with this, we're looking at, is that correct?
Yeah.
And this may be a question for Ken, but it seems like we're being shorted.
Well, yes and, so I think that, you're right, but I'd also say that in those, we don't get enough from anybody's individual tax bill, or I shouldn't say anybody. Most of our homes don't provide enough money for an individual student. Right, so.
Sure.
It's important to note that, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. All I'm saying is, you know, with the tax bill, and we just actually looked at some of the numbers earlier, right? You know, 6,000, 7,000 that it's coming to the school district. That's not support. That's nowhere near what our tuition is. Our tuition is.
Right, so our tuition this year is $17,852 roughly.
So if we have a home that has, I'm gonna not do the math, but if we have a home that has 3 students, we're getting 3 times that from that individual home.
In the TIF.
In the TIF, based on this, if that makes sense.
But we're losing the money of the neighbor who's retired and
Correct.
doesn't have any kids in there. So is it a wash is the question.
Well, and
right?
especially if, because we keep hearing, or at least what I keep hearing is we're doing these 55 and older communities where they're gonna try and limit the amount of kids, which to me is gonna drastically limit the amount of revenue we see if it's based on student enrollment and tuition. Those same communities still pay the taxes, and I get and I appreciate what you're saying, in that, you know, my tax revenue is not funding my kids
Right.
individually. But again, if you have 150 home development and only, let's say 10 kids come out of it, we're seeing a surplus from that. Whereas with this, we only see those 10 kids times whatever.
Right,
you know,
so
tuition is.
in that case, then what we would see is a limited amount out of that school tuition payment, right? We get our impact fees and our land cash from all those homes. And then whatever is in that 10%, that's what we would see. For a home that, let's say a home that didn't have any kids, right? What we would see from that would be, you know, an initial impact fee and land cash, it's a one-time payment, and then whatever's in that 10% on this column all the way to the right, that would be impacted by that home. So based on like current tax rates we talked about, that home that's $7,000 that doesn't have kids, we would see about $700, yeah.
And again, not a darn nickel guarantee. It's all based on promises and letters of intent
Right.
being signed that
we've never seen.
Correct.
Never been produced. We're, Village of Sugar Grove is just pulling numbers out of their whatever. I mean, this is promise. And the one time they had the nerve or the guts to come before us, they didn't have any idea of any of the answers and weren't even sure. And this is all dependent upon their ability to implement this. And from what I've seen, I'm seeing giveaways to billionaires on the backs of Kaneland students and other taxing bodies. And, here's a few crumbs from the table, Kaneland, just go away and be quiet. But we have these wonderful projections. Yeah, that's over 23 years, assuming they're able to pull any of this off and don't have to extend it even further.
Has there been any offer from Crown and or Sugar Grove to give us land for a school, to give us a school, to give us someone in the community said that they could potentially give us a field house? Has there been any sort of offer to make us whole from this?
No, but we haven't had an actual face-to-face meeting. We've had exchanges of emails. So I think we could throw that on the table.
Well, I think we need to throw a lot more on There's a lot more on my list if that's what we're playing, right? Yeah.
So, we could definitely throw that on the table.
And one of the questions that was asked to us last week was, does the district need land for future building? That was asked, and right now the district does own 94 acres down at Harder Middle School that are currently rented out. We also have 15 acres in Maple Park, and then we have 40 additional acres at the high school campus that we rent to our FFA. So we do have a substantial, as a district, a fairly substantial amount of land should we experience new growth? And so one of the options may be, in lieu of land, what does an additional land cash payment look like for that?
So can you, and I'm sorry, I know I get passionate, and I know you guys aren't. It's not like you guys are Sugar Grove, you're doing this, but, so I apologize. You know, if Kent was here, I would be the same way with him. Can you explain to the public, again, when we went to the Joint Review Board, right, the JRB, with our neutral vote, what it meant for us to do that, A, from our perspective, and B, what would it have meant for us to have a, what's the term, not negative vote, but an against vote? I mean,
Yes, no, or neutral.
what impact, what we have had, if we, because we're getting a lot of pushback from the public, you know, holding our referendum ransom because we had this neutral vote, as if our negative vote, again, I'm getting passionate, I'll calm down. As if our negative vote would have changed anything. I mean, what power did we have?
Really, it's advisory only. Any vote at the JRB is advisory only. I believe if they hit a certain threshold of negative votes from taxing bodies, it increases what they would need to pass it, but they passed it by that threshold anyway. So at the end of the day, it's advisory only on our end. And so we have zero control over whether or not a TIF is passed.
Well, and they visited us and told us this basically anyways, right? We had a visit from Sugar Grove that basically said, this is going through, like it or not, right? So.
And I think the other important piece to remember of that is that had we, as a district, had a negative vote, it really limits your negotiation and your seat at the table. A no or against vote, I think, really means there's no reason for Sugar Grove to work with us in that case. And so I think that's also really difficult.
Right. As a general rule,
oh, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
As a general rule, that this column all the way to the right does not exist with TIFs. Right, and I know that some of the other taxing bodies voted no, but it's important to note that some of them get significantly less money out of, you know, just because of their tax rates. We're talking about millions, and they may be talking about a few $100,000, right? So their no vote may not have had the same impact on them negotiating, because they may not really care all that much. But for us, I mean, this could be you know, even the 26 million is not nothing, right? And then I think, like I said, this is their starting point, so I think we can go from there. But it is advisory only, and we wanted to position ourselves to be sitting at the table to say, we'd like a little bit more, we'd like this, we'd like this.
So the assumption is, our attorney is unfortunately not here, but the assumption is that the direction our attorney provided us was purely from the perspective of us as a district getting the most that we could out of a situation we had no control over.
Absolutely.
So at the end of the day, we're making the best choice for the kids, because regardless of how we felt about the TIF, it was going to we didn't have a voice at the table. It was going to happen regardless. And so that's why we received the direction we had, and that's why the vote, I believe, that's why the vote went the way it did.
Absolutely.
No, it's not outright support for the TIF, and I don't know. It just is what it is.
What happened if they leave Wellington out of a can of Alpo? So many words.
Well, I think what's frustrating, at least for me, and I don't want to speak for everybody, is that we're trying to work with folks on this because we're trying to do what's best for our students and our communities. But then it seems to be, for lack of a better word, tense and not like, you know, a good faith back and forth yet. I mean, we haven't had the meetings yet, so maybe it'll be better. But that's a struggle for me, is that I think we voted a way that we weren't really like wanting to vote that way, but we were trying to do what was best. And then you're still not working with us. Like, that's not the ball game I wanted to play, right? Yeah.
Well, we haven't had the meetings yet, but the mayor of Sugar Grove filed
that's what I'm saying.
an OMA.
We might not have had the meetings, but we've already had the first
She's
volley.
accused us of an Open Meetings Act violation when we were having those closed meetings to protect Sugar Grove. We were trying to have these discussions to prepare ourselves to gain knowledge regarding this TIF, but not necessarily put everything out there so that, you know, to protect that Sugar Grove, hey, we can work with you, we're trying to, because we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like super frustrating.
I mean, to put it succinctly, what we're seeing out of Sugar Grove and Sugar Grove's leadership is just plain and simple bad faith. Negotiating in bad faith and dealing in bad faith, which has a specific meaning. I mean, you know, we can use all the other words we want, but it comes down to bad faith.
And at the end of the day, we're still trying to make this thing work the best we possibly can. Because at the end of the day, we have no choice but to try to make sure that we get enough funds to provide an excellent quality education to our students.
Well, I mean, we do have a choice. We can spend money
I
on
think that's the next.
fighting it.
Yeah.
So there, and I, from my perspective, that option's on the table. I think we need Ken here for that discussion. So
I mean,
we probably shouldn't proceed with that without
what
that.
Ken has shared is in order to fight, essentially, we'd be looking at about at least $250,000 in legal fees.
See, yeah, my understanding was it was a maximum of, not at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Worst case scenario.
Worst case.
All right, then I misunderstood him. So,
No, it's okay.
But, you know, it could be up to, I guess, $250,000. And then, essentially, what happens is we kill the TIF. And just to be clear, if we kill the TIF, then we continue to get $50,000. Or, you know, with minor escalation over time.
That's the best outcome from coming from litigation,
If,
correct?
yes,
The TIF
that
dying.
is the outcome of litigation would be make it go away, make it stop, and or force Crown to develop without the TIF. But based on what Sugar Grove has said repeatedly is this wouldn't happen without the TIF. I'm not commenting on whether or not that's true.
Yeah.
That has been the line that they've.
Well, she said that to us.
Yeah, I mean that's been the line that they've had the entire time. So.
Given what we've seen in similar developments along the same corridor, Naperville, Aurora, and out of Warrenville, other places that have done it without a TIF, you know, that it comes back to the bad faith on the part of Sugar Grove leadership.
I have to agree. The only ones we've heard say that. Sorry, Bob.
Don't be down my back and tell me it's raining.
The only people we've heard say that this land won't develop is Sugar Grove, and you know, of course, we're hearing, and of course, whatever we hear from anybody, it's all just words. But I've heard that there have been other offers on these properties that were blocked because of this, or for whatever reason they were blocked. So you know, if we're getting all our information from one source that have an obvious agenda to move forward with this master plan, you know, how do we know that that's valid information, and how do we do what's best for our kids?
Well, I don't know that developing this land is like that's not. To me, that's not my call. Like, if it happens naturally on its own, great. It happens naturally on its own. But this is kind of an artificial way of creating that development, which has a negative impact on our communities and a negative impact on the school district.
So what is our options? I mean, this is a Ken Fleur. Sorry, Bob. Because what we're being asked is, I mean, we're trying to cut things, and where we were saying maybe not 50,000 for written translation for our kids, but we're going to spend 250,000 to kill a TIF. This burden is falling on us, and that's what the thing that sucks the most. It's falling on us. That's 250,000 possible, worst case scenario. That's being taken away from our children. So why is it on us?
I agree with you, Jennifer. It shouldn't be.
And I think
we could use $250,000 in a lot of great ways.
Yes,
correct.
I can think of a few.
Yeah.
And I think the other taxing bodies, right, all the other taxing bodies make up the other 30%. So their financial stake to move forward with litigation is it's lower than ours,
Sure,
right?
They're not as incentivized because.
Well, you can't ask the park district to cough up that kind of cash.
Correct.
Right, yeah.
It's also, you know, I think to put another perspective on it, I think what makes this really challenging is even just thinking about the financial impact, right? You know, Mrs. Simmons, you stated we're having discussions about $50 an hour, up to $250 for this, and when I look at this, even this 10% surplus, right? If I just look at that one column in year 8, I'm like, gosh, that $1,263,000, that's more than our capital projects budget that we have on an annual basis. And so when I see that number, part of me says, the the amount that we could address if this was additional funds to our district, that's I think another perspective. We could make a dent in that $26 million capital project list that we have.
See, but that's not guaranteed. I would agree with you.
It's not.
If that was guaranteed money coming in, I would say, look, this is on the table, but it's not guaranteed. It's all promises. It's all
Correct.
just
It's all based on the development plan that
Their
they,
timelines.
backed by
that they
revenue
have,
bonds.
they have shared, so.
I guess my struggle is with too, is that the burden on the community is being put on us too. Because again, yes, if all of this happens to happen, then we have $1 million. So, but our referendum is being held hostage. And
It's a
so
lot more
we
than
are being
$1 million.
forced to make a decision to spend money that should go to kids, but instead to kill a TIF. So that is the biggest problem here.
I see what you're saying.
And we're very open, I think we're all very open.
Yeah.
Our feelings about the TIF, nobody is happy about this. But our role here is, where does our money go to? It should be going to the kids. We're asking for a referendum to improve things for our kids, and we're about to spend this money to kill a TIF.
Which I agree with. I agree that the
But
decision's
we're not
wrong.
gonna be
I
giving
don't
up
know though.
Money we should have gotten out of this property in the TIF. We are just fighting for what rightfully should be Kaneland's.
Go ahead, Dr. Lawler.
And
Yeah,
instead,
what I was saying made sense.
Sugar Grove giving millions to billionaires, and they're doing it on the backs of our students. And other school districts, we can sit idly by and, just accept whatever crumbs Sugar Grove officials choose to send our way. It sets a poor example.
Well, I think, oh, go ahead. You ready?
Yeah, I think I have it now. So I think what I'll need, or I would like to know, is whatever decisions we go with, whatever pathway we go, we need the public. We need the public behind us on this, right? So if we're gonna go into a lawsuit, we need the public behind us 100%. If we choose not to, because we're focused on the referendum, we need the public behind us 100%, right? So we just need the community to help us be our shield, be our support, because we are stuck in this position by no making of our own.
I think it's important to note too we did get that $250 million estimate. Worst case scenario is how I understood it. But there are other districts that have challenged this.
250,000.
250,000, not 250,000, sorry.
We couldn't talk
Sorry.
250 million.
But my point is that there are other districts that have challenged this and are challenging it, and there are also community members who are doing a lot of research and have resources that could drastically reduce that cost if we went to court and we got a judgment in our favor, if we got a ruling in our favor. So, remember, worst case scenario, 250,000.
Yeah.
It's still gonna cost money.
Isn't there precedence already, Crest Hill?
So, we need to talk to Kim Flory about the specifics.
Why don't
There's one going on in Winfield as well that would be more applicable.
Winfield as well?
But the districts have fought this before and they've won. It's not new. And I think that the 250,000 is, and it's Ken's job to protect us and give us worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But, I think it's best to go into this with the mindset that, look, that's what it could cost us, but not necessarily. It just depends on a lot of factors right now.
I guess one question that I would want to, from a financial perspective, to ask Ken is, in these cases where districts have been successful in stopping a TIF, how many of those areas did develop? What was the financial return for those districts that went through that process?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right, because if they stopped their TIF and then nothing ever developed, it didn't necessarily put the district in a better financial position. Like, how long did it take them then to recoup those costs?
Okay, I've done some research, called some people down that way. On the Crest Hill, two of the major parcels, particularly along Weber Road there, were developed without a TIF.
So we're at somewhat of an impasse because we don't have
Yeah.
Right?
This isn't a,
So does the district want any,
just discussion.
what else would the district want from the board at this point?
I think, we're trying to set up a meeting to negotiate. I believe, we're looking at next week, ideally, with Mr. Flory, with district administration, and then Sugar Grove and their legal counsel. It's unclear right now if the mayor will attend. If the mayor does attend, then we would extend the invitation to Board President Gonzalez also, just so we have all the right people at the table. I think for us, understanding, I think the board has been very clear that what they've proposed is not where we want to end up. And so I think that direction, I think we can, if the board would like us to inquire about land or a payment in lieu of land, I think it sounds like that's another area that we should explore. I would be hesitant to have pointed conversation about litigation until after the board's had the opportunity to discuss that with Mr. Flory, but I think we can definitely let them know it's on the table, that we have not closed that door. I think they probably already know. My guess is they're watching right now, so they know that. But we definitely can let them know that legal action is on the table, and could be, depending on how negotiations go, and or what the board decides in the weeks to come. Is there anything else? Is that like a thumbs up for like I'm on the right track there, or?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, so we can continue to make this an area of update as we both explore negotiations, and we will work to get Mr. Flory here for our next meeting.
So, I guess, do we have to augment should I just proceed with the rest of the meeting, or do we have to augment the agenda since because that impacts two of the closed session topics, correct?
The first one for under litigation, when it comes time to go to closed session, we should amend the agenda to negate that one tonight, but the other three we can still talk about. Number two, you can always take off and wait on that one as well, but number two, we can have that discussion on the closed minutes, but the litigation should be pulled.
I'm just wondering procedurally, should I just continue with?
Yeah, you can continue the rest of the meeting, but when you get to closed session, amend the closed session to include only the bottom three.
Okay, so there's no further action taken regarding this topic at this time, so we're going to go ahead and proceed with the, I'm sorry for yelling at you guys. I love you, you know that.
No worries, we're good. Just excitement.
We're going to move forward with the superintendent board report. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Layden.
Yes, first couple things. Last week we had our October CAC meeting, two primary topics. The first one was David Rollman, high school athletic director and activity director, was there to provide an update on athletics and activities, and not only just the fall sports and activities that we have, and or, excuse me, the winter athletics and activities, but also some social media engagement, some apps, how families can follow both athletics and activities in real time online that we're working on. So a couple of those apps are updated, a couple of the information sources have been updated to provide that in real time. And then the second topic for CAC was referendum, as Dr. Rolwing and Dr. Bogan are going to several locations to share the information. Part of the idea was to share that with CAC as well, because we've shared it with CAC members in the past. Had a really good discussion, a lot of feedback. There were six or seven CAC members that were there for the update that Dr. Rolwing shared. Again, got some feedback that will be included into the rest of the information, and actually the group went into overtime, went about 20 minutes longer than typical because of the dialogue that people wanted to stay in here. So I don't know, Dr. Rolwing, was there anything specific to that dialogue that you wanted to share, or just know that it's noted with the rest of the feedback that we've received in other outreach?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, it's similar to the feedback and the conversations we're having at town halls, trying to be as open and transparent with people as questions as we can. So I thought it was a great back and forth discussion. It was not like a one-way monologue. It was a lot of the back and forth, and it took me off my script pretty quickly. So it's a good time.
Thank you for that. A couple other things, just other regular updates. Next week is one of our, because of no school on Tuesday, which is the election day, it's kind of an interesting week for us. We typically will do all of our scheduling to have very few 2 or 3 day weeks. Thanksgiving week is an anomaly, and now because of the election day this year, as you know, next year we already have a calendar approved for next year as well. Without the election, that is back to a normal 3 day week. But for next week, it's really interesting because there's no school on Tuesday, and then students on Thursday and Friday are not in session. Parent-teacher conferences are Wednesday night and then all day Thursday. So students are only in session 2 days next week. We looked at that a number of ways and a number of times. Could we move the day somewhere else? Could we rearrange it? There were very few good options, so we kept it as originally intended. And then again, next year, it's back to a typical 3 day week during that week with just the conferences at the end. And then the last update that I think you heard from during public comment, the sectional cross-country is this weekend, but just one additional piece to that, the girls' race starts at 10 o'clock a.m. and the boys' race starts at 11 o'clock a.m. So they go back-to-back races with enough time in between to get all the record keeping, all the scoring, all the competitors to finish, and then from there, the boys' race then starts at 11 o'clock. Those were the updates that I had.
Dr. Rowland?
Yeah, so shockingly, I have a referendum update. We have continued to hold meetings and attend events to seek feedback for the referendum. Last week, we met with our staff at McDowell. We held a town hall in Maple Park where we had 11 attendees. We met with CAC, and actually this morning we were over at Blackberry Creek, and we have attended a couple of school events. We do have additional town halls coming up in Caneville tomorrow, in Elburn on Wednesday the 30th, and then next week we'll be in Sugar Grove on November 7th. We'll have a virtual town hall on November 6th next week. So even though the students are not going to be there very much, we will be holding a lot of events regarding the referendum. We do encourage people to join us. It does make it a lot more interactive, and I think we're learning a lot in terms of public concerns and helping to gear up for whatever we recommend in January. I will be coming back with board presentations on the 11th regarding student feedback, and on the 25th of November regarding staff feedback and community feedback. And then from there, we will have some discussion regarding recommendations with a vote going in January for whatever the board chooses to ask for. One more thing, I had the opportunity to attend the fall play, Radium Girls, last Friday night. I was really impressed with the production. The students were incredibly talented. It was an intense play, if anyone had the chance to see it. But it's evident how hard the students work, and they should be very proud of the production they put on.
Thank you. Dr. Bogan?
Sure, I just have a very short track update. Unfortunately, this week we did experience some weather setbacks. While we had decent weather today, wind over the next 2 days is anticipated to be extremely high. Then with rain coming potentially Thursday morning with still some high winds. We are looking at the rest of the weekend schedule, calling for rain as well. So right now, we do not believe that the track will be able to be painted and striped this week due to weather. So the contractor is looking pretty much every day, every morning, and making that call as sort of the weather changes. But we do anticipate that it may not even start this week. It may have to be pushed into next week. On On the plus side, with all of this, I did want to let the board know that Mr. Rollman is going to be working with the coaches to make sure that they get out there prior to this project being completed, sort of for that final inspection and for that final sign-off. So he's keeping them in the loop on the timing and as the project for this last part of it changes. But the track surface itself is down and completed, so it still looks great, even though it's just black and gray right now with the exchange zone. So looking forward to wrapping this up.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay. Slattery, you are up.
Good evening. On Friday, October 25th, Kaneland High School held a blood drive for students and staff. This blood drive helped impact 150 lives and was the most successful blood drive the school has held since 2015. The next blood drive will be held next semester on May 2nd. Varsity football enters playoffs this week against Belvedere North at 7 p.m. Friday, November 1st at Belvedere North High School. Varsity volleyball is also entering their regional tournaments, playing at IMSA in Aurora tonight, actually at 6. Also, varsity soccer unfortunately fell to Belvedere North 1-2 in their regional championship playoff game at Freeport High School, ending their season with a record of 16-7-1, and then placing second in conference. Marching band competed at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign this weekend and placed 4th out of 5 schools in their class level. They competed against bigger schools like Washington, Grayslake North, and Champaign Central. This last competition will also bring their season to an end, unfortunately. Finally, Student Council has raised close to $1,500 for their Veterans Day fundraiser for the veterans organization I mentioned at the last meeting. They'll be placing over 100 flags on the high school's front lawn, and you can continue to donate for that organization up until Veterans Day.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We'll move forward to topics for future agendas. Any topics?
I have one. I would really like us to put the EC through 5 curriculum and supporting materials online and have it as a resource for parents who want to and are helping their students with, with their schoolwork, and have that readily available to them so they can see the curriculum, and some supporting materials which will aid them in helping their students learn. A lot more parents than we think are involved in working with their students after out of the classroom. And I think this would be a valuable outreach to the community, especially to the parents of elementary students, who this information would help, that help at home.
Well, I want to just point out quickly, I recently met with our Ed Services team, and we did discuss how to make that curriculum that's online more user-friendly and make it more family accessible. So we are working on looking at, apparently we previously had a different kind of document online that based on feedback from the CAC, we kind of thinned down, but I think based on the feedback we're getting now, we're going to look to revive what we had been doing, make it more accessible, so we can provide updates on that as we go through that process.
Okay, what's your timeline for that, Kurt?
Well, we had our initial meeting last Wednesday, so I can provide a timeline to the board in the weekly update on Friday. We have some templates that we think are fairly easily converted, so I don't think this is going to be multiple months, but it may take us a little while to get everything set up in the right way. We have to update some stuff, so I can give you a more specific timeline through the weekly update.
And supporting materials?
What we can put online, yes. Some of it may be proprietary based on what curriculum resource we're using, but I believe we can provide some supporting materials and then make that part of an ongoing project to provide more for our families.
Yeah, this would be a valuable asset for parents of elementary school students who want to provide assistance, and a real good way to engage and develop relationships between homeschools and these students. So, yeah.
So that's not necessarily a thumbs up, right? That's just kind of an ask.
Correct. I think it's a ongoing dialogue that Dr. Rowling has been working on. As far as the timeline that Board Member Mankivsky asked for, I think Dr. Rowling's working on it to get it done as fast as possible.
Okay. Anything else? Once, twice? Okay. All right, then, let's go ahead and move forward with the second round of public comments, and we do have a couple people signed up. Just keep in mind the provisions stated before, I don't know if provisions is the right word, but the guidelines, thank you, guidelines stated before. And first up, we have Scott Stalkup.
Hi, Scott Stalkup from Sugar Grove. I got 3 kids in the district. I want to talk about the TIF a little bit. Hearing you guys dialogue, I think there's a few things to very much confirm in your negotiations. One is, in several of the meetings that the village did, they said and continue to say that the TIF is for infrastructure only. And I believe the statute's pretty clear that you don't get reimbursed for infrastructure. You get reimbursed for the residential. So if they spend the TIF on infrastructure, I just want to make sure that you guys do the due diligence to make sure they can't sidestep you in the 12th hour after the fact, the signed agreement. I completely agree with having a minimum guaranteed amount paid to the district. And the other issue is, I believe early on, and I haven't gone through the lengthy final document, but based on the zoning that they approved, I don't think there's any guarantee that there will be residential in here. I think they can elect, or Crown can elect, to change and do whatever zoning they want. They gave up, I believe, most of those rights when they did the type of zoning they did. So another item to very much check through the final agreement there. As far as the neutral, I believe you're correct that all it does is changes the amount of votes they need to pass it. But what I think it also does, if you would have voted against it, like the fire department did, is there were other taxing bodies that were very much watching what the school district did as the major taxing body in that, and either followed suit or weren't willing to say they were against it without more support from the district. So I think you could have gotten some more support by voting against it in that. The downside to litigation is, and the pushback you're going to get, and I don't want to say that that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do, but to get ahead of it, if you elect to go that route, is there's people that are going to believe that your taxpayer money is fighting taxpayer money because the taxpayers are funding the school district and taxpayers are funding the village as well. So it's going to get looked at, and before the village comes and says, school district, you're causing us to spend taxpayer money, you're spending taxpayer money to do this, so just be cautious of that.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Stalkop.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have, forgive me, Jaden Chada.
Hello, Jaden Chad, Blackberry Township, right next to Crown. Topic is the TIF. So first I want to point out, TIF districts can be amended. So they were approved or given the $350 million as an up to by SB Friedman, their consultant. So theoretically in the future, and Crown has confirmed this, that their infrastructure that they're laying on the north side of the tollway is on the far east side of their property. And Sugar Grove's comprehensive land use plan shows industry on that whole north side all the way to Bliss Road. So it would be very easy for Sugar Grove to amend that TIF district and go to a higher number to further move that infrastructure east. I just think you guys should know that for your negotiations. And I think too, they're giving you the best case scenario, which they've done the whole time. You are the most powerful of all of the taxing bodies when it comes to fighting the TIF. So of course they want you to be happy. Of course they're giving you the best case scenario numbers. I think if you guys, and there's been hundreds of people that have shown up to the meetings, voiced their opposition to the TIF. If you guys were to bring it to litigation and challenge the TIF, even if it wasn't successful, I think it would be. I think it's a sham. But if you guys even went as far as challenging it, you would have a whole lot more support for your referendum than I think you do now. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. All right, well, the Board of Education is scheduled to go into closed session to discuss, this is where I'm gonna amend it, correct?
Yes.
To, do we wanna do 2C9 still?
Yeah, we can,
So we're just taking,
2C21.
I'm sorry, yeah, I just figured it was in order of what was on the agenda.
Yeah, no. Everything but 2C11, which is the litigation.
Okay.
Without Ken here, we will withdraw that one.
So we're going to amend the closed session agenda to remove Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C11. So we will go into closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1, 2C9, 2C21, where there will be no action taken following the session, and therefore go into Therefore, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. At this time, I will entertain a motion to go into closed session to discuss Illinois Open Meetings Act 2C1, 2C9, and 2C21 at 9:07 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mr. Cook.
Aye.
Mr. McCauley.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye. 6-0, we're now in closed session.